So on this TV show called Hunters Now, a news anchor kicks things off with a speech about hunters. Right after that, she introduces the night's guest of honor, who turns out to be the A-rank hunter Ibuki Yugo. With that, the host asks Yugo about his recent amazing feat in the Great Snowfield Dungeon. Meanwhile, our protagonist is watching this hunter brag about his Flame Mage class. That's Ninomiya Tsukasa, a 23-year-old guy who looks seriously annoyed by the interview. He notices how everyone in the audience is staring at Ibuki Yugo with total reverence and awe. Seeing that whole scene, Tsukasa wonders to himself why he can't be like that famous dude. His whole deal is that even though he's an S rank, his stats are pathetically low. From there, we're taken back to the past, when the planet started to revolve around dungeons. Out of nowhere, mysterious portals started popping up everywhere, leading to unknown domains. These places were loaded with traps and dangerous creatures guarding the passages. However, they also had magic items like full heal elixirs and dragon horns. Because of that, anyone who succeeded in snagging these treasures ended up becoming super rich. At the same time, certain individuals began to awaken special superhuman abilities. These people who entered the dungeons looking for items were dubbed hunters. With that, the whole social structure was turned upside down, and the economy became based on dungeons. This way, it didn't matter if you were a nobody, because even someone like our hero would have a shot. With that hope in mind, he looks at his status, which shows his S-rank trapmaster class. His special skill allows him to put all the dangers of a dungeon under his command. In a place filled with threats, controlling the traps is the same as having control of the entire dungeon. For that reason, Ninomiya Tsukasa was totally hyped when he awakened this OP class. That moment should have been the best of his life, but that was 2 years ago. The story flashes back to when he went to get his hunter license, and the examiner asked for his skill. Full of confidence, our protagonist holds out his hand and yells to activate his ability. He tries to use trap activation on a wooden target in front of everyone. To his complete surprise, the skill just doesn't show up, and nothing happens. The instructor is baffled and asks the guy what exactly is going on. Completely embarrassed, Ninomiya Tsukasa says it's nothing and asks for one more try. He then places both hands on the wooden post, hoping to use his skill again. Even with all his effort, nothing happens, leaving the poor guy in total despair. The examiner was already showing that he was losing patience with the whole act. In the meantime, our protagonist starts to panic because he can't believe what's happening. The audience starts making fun of him while the instructor glares at him with a look of contempt. So the man asks what he's doing, and Tsukasa desperately tries to explain himself. His skill description reveals that it forces the activation of traps inside dungeons. From there it clicks, and he realizes the skill must only work on real dangers. However, the examiner keeps staring at him with a not-so-friendly expression. With that, the man states that sometimes fakers show up who invent their own ranks. The guy tries to argue back, showing his status screen and declaring he's an S rank. But the instructor counters, saying that no one can see another person's status window. In a final act of desperation, he begs to be tested in a real dungeon. The man immediately says no because you need a license and combat skills to enter. With nothing left to do, our protagonist asks what he's supposed to do then. The examiner just ignores him and says there are other jobs besides being a hunter. That response leaves Ninomiya Tsukasa completely lost and shocked by the harsh reality. Because of that, he couldn't become a hunter, and the job he got was at the association. Now, in a training room, we see several people practicing their combat skills. Our protagonist is among them and seems to be training in boxing with great dedication. But just a moment later, he gets brutally knocked out by some blonde dude with a cruel smirk. The bully orders him to do his job right while holding him by the hair without any mercy. Apparently, his job is to serve as a punching bag for the other hunters to train on. With a powerful kick, Ninomiya Tsukasa is sent flying, with no chance to defend himself. Even without being able to use his skills, he managed to get a job as a training assistant. Just then, the blonde guy gets closer and says he still remembers him very well from the past. He claims Tsukasa was a loser in school and made up being an S rank at the exam. That's Azunuma, an old classmate who now takes out his frustrations on him. Even while getting beaten up, our protagonist thinks to himself that he really is an S rank. Hearing this, Asanuma gets even angrier and lunges at him with all his strength. He screams for the guy to confess the truth once and for all while kicking him violently. After beating the poor guy up, Asanuma asks if he's finally going to drop that idea. Next, Asanuma mentions the special permit that non-hunters need to go into dungeons. With his face all banged up, our protagonist brings up the promise that he'd get the permit if he could take it. The bully simply turns away and calls him pathetic for having the nerve to call him out. The two of them stare each other down with looks full of hate and determination, showing they won't back down. Seeing this, Asanuma says he understands our protagonist's obsession with wanting to go into a dungeon. With a cruel smile, he suggests one last test to see if the poor guy deserves his help. They move away from the other hunters, and Nanomiya Tsukasa asks what this final test is. The bully says it's pretty simple and orders the guy to grab a piece of paper he's holding. That paper is the signed permit, and the test is to take the document from his hand. Our protagonist feels a glimmer of hope, but Asanuma isn't done talking yet. To get the document, he'll have to endure attacks from two guys who just appeared. He recognizes both of them as the same guys who used to bully him with Asanuma back in school. Even knowing he's about to get a major beatdown, he has no other choice, and accepts the challenge for the dungeon. From there, a session of pain begins, where the guy takes non-stop punches and kicks. Watching this, Asanuma is shocked by the guy's tenacity in wanting to enter a dungeon. With that, Asanuma approaches with the permit and comments that since he's taking it all so seriously, he rips the document right in his face and says that's the exact reason he can't let him go. Our protagonist's eyes widen in pure shock and rage at the guy's attitude. The bully continues to tear the paper and laughs, saying he hates the guy's hopefulness. Nanomiya Tsukasa grinds his teeth in fury, but can't do anything to stop it. In a burst of anger, he screams Asanuma's name and tries to charge at the bully. But the bully is quicker and grabs our protagonist's arm very firmly. A moment later, a magic dagger appears, and he plunges it into the guy's hand without a shred of compassion. The other guys are impressed with Asanuma's skill and comment on how strong hunters are. With that, the blonde guy says he failed the test and tells our protagonist to just give up. Lying on the ground with the dagger in his hand, he curses himself for falling into his classmate's trap. He already knew it was all a sham, and that the bully would never keep his promise. The truth is, the permit system exists, but whoever recommends a civilian becomes responsible for them. So there are only downsides for the recommender, and nobody takes on that kind of task. Unless some rich guy pays a fortune, nobody takes on that role, and especially not Asanuma. Despite that, he needed something to hold on to so he wouldn't completely lose his mind. Because even all beaten up and humiliated, his hope was still standing. He had faith that if he could just get into a dungeon, his miserable life would finally change. That was the only thing our protagonist could still believe in after everything. Suddenly, a mysterious red bolt of lightning strikes right in the center of the city, freaking everyone out. Some random guy is in shock as he witnesses the destruction that the lightning bolt caused all around. Looking up at the sky, he tries to understand what the heck is happening to the world. Someone yells for him to watch out for what's coming up behind him right at that moment. Right after that, an entire building starts to collapse right in front of everyone. In his eyes, we can see the pure terror and desperation of the chaotic situation that has just unfolded. The sky turns blood red, and the city becomes a battlefield in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, on a big screen, a reporter starts to deliver some breaking news. According to the Hunter Association, dungeon breaks are happening all over the world. With the entire world turning into one big dungeon, a beam of energy is fired. The population goes into a total panic with the devastation and chaos spreading rapidly. Tsukasa is frozen in fear as he sees a colossal red dragon destroying the city. He completely despairs at the chaotic situation unfolding all around him. To protect himself, the guy dives to the ground as the creature's tail passes right over him. Amidst the rubble, he spots the silhouette of a winged monster in the reddish sky. His eyes go wide as he realizes the world has become one giant dungeon. Faced with this, he remembers his trapmaster class, which controls the dangers of dungeons. A blue aura emerges around him, and he realizes he can finally use his abilities. This catastrophic event became known as the Great Dungeon Break. From that point on, the portals that divided the worlds shattered all at once. With a confident smirk, our protagonist activates his first skill, Trap Scan. He thinks that if the world has turned into a dungeon, his skill has to work now. His eyes glow blue as he can see all the traps around him. A map-like view shows the exact location of every nearby danger. With a smile of relief, Tsukasa realizes his power was never a lie. Now he's sure that he can finally become a real hunter. Normally, the dangers scattered throughout dungeons only serve to give hunters a hard time. But for our protagonist, it's different, because his power shows the exact position of each one. From here on out, everything gets easier, since he knows where all the threats are. With a look full of confidence, the guy now has total control of the situation. Suddenly, he spots a night monster chasing a mother and her son in the middle of the street. Without hesitating, Tsukasa picks up a metal pipe from the ground to use as a weapon. He believes that with the power of a trapmaster, he can take out that creature. Meanwhile, the woman screams for her son to run because the monster is almost on top of them. In the rush, the little boy ends up tripping and falling to the ground in a complete panic. His mother looks back, terrified, seeing that her son Takuru has been left behind. The creature then stops right in front of the boy, who is paralyzed with fear. With a cruel smile, the monster raises its sword, ready to strike the kid. A moment later, the blade comes swinging down toward little Takuru. But in the nick of time, our protagonist shows up and blocks the blow using just the metal pipe. Furious, he glares at the monster and yells for the creature to bring it on. With a confident grin, Tsukasa announces that the trap to take out the monster is already set. So he dodges a horizontal swing from the creature with incredible agility. Right after, our protagonist jumps back to lure the monster to the right spot. From there, the pipe he was using gets stuck in the ground, right where he wanted it. The armored knight approaches slowly, not understanding the guy's strategy. Our protagonist watches from a distance as the monster steps exactly where he planned. He then confirms with a smile that the trap is right there, underneath the creature. At that, a blue light glows, and a magic circle forms, activating the danger. A huge blast of blue energy shoots upward with incredible power. The trap's power is so immense that the monster has zero chance of escaping. A pendulum with a giant axe appears and slices the thing in two without any mercy. Seeing the scene, our protagonist celebrates because his plan worked perfectly. He reflects that his fighting style is to take out monsters using the traps in the environment. In the background, the mother hugs Takuru, who is crying with relief for being saved just in time. Our protagonist smiles, satisfied to see that the family is finally safe. Our protagonist thinks that even mid-level hunters would have trouble with that monster. With his face a little dirty, he analyzes the chaotic situation that has taken over the city. In the distance, he watches the mother and son hugging safely after the big scare. The woman picks the boy up and runs far away while Tsukasa watches them go. Suddenly, a group of armored knights appears, and he realizes he can't fight them one by one. With no time to waste, the guy decides to use another ability to deal with the threat. He raises his hand and with a powerful shout activates all the traps in the area at once. With that, one of the monsters is caught by surprise by a magic circle that appears out of thin air. The skill hits the creature dead on with a huge explosion of energy coming from the ground. Right after, several blue spheres surround the other monsters, signaling that more dangers are coming. The forced activation works, and he can use the traps without needing to touch them. After crushing the enemies with boulders, he levels up to level 2, and his skills improve. Seeing this, he gets excited because as an S rank, he can learn new skills and get stronger. Some civilians who were hiding are shocked to see boulders falling from the sky. One of them approaches Tsukasa, asking for help and wondering where they should run. Our protagonist says he's not an official hunter, but they need to find a safe zone. He explains that these places are zones within dungeons where there are no monsters or traps. Normally, you'd need a huge exploration team to find a place like that. The civilian despairs at this, but Tsukasa calmly says that for him, it's no problem. With a smile, he crouches down and places his hand on the ground, which begins to glow blue. From there, the guy activates his trap scan ability one more time. His logic is simple: find a place with no traps to find the long-awaited safe zone. With that, he tells everyone that the safe spot is Higashikawa Park and tells them to follow him. He then adds that they just need to trust his ability for it to work out. Without much choice, the whole group agrees and runs after him toward salvation. After a while, they arrive at the park, and one of the men celebrates their achievement. Everyone is relieved because there are no monsters around, and the boy's mother says thank you. The woman and Takeru turn to our protagonist and thank him for saving their lives. Suddenly, something seems wrong, and Tsukasa notices some strange movement at the park entrance. Seeing this, he gives a kind of crazy grin and runs at top speed toward somewhere. He's smiling because now he can see everything and feels like he has the best eyes in the world. With this vision, he thinks that if places without traps are safe, then the opposite must also be true. A place full of traps must be guarding something very important. Given this, our protagonist deduces that it could be a super powerful hidden item. Without wasting any time, he runs toward the spot he saw to grab that treasure. He knows that if he can get his hands on that item, his life will change for good. Suddenly, a familiar voice comes from behind him, calling him a weakling without a hint of shame. The sound of someone landing hard on the ground gets our protagonist's attention. This guy calls him a phony S-rank, and our hero can't believe who he's seeing. The guy's eyes widen in pure shock as he recognizes the figure in front of him. It was none other than Asanuma, his old classmate and the biggest bully of his life. Ninomiya Tsukasa is completely frozen and wonders what the heck that guy is doing here. With a suspicious look, our protagonist tries to understand what the bully is trying to say. The blonde guy figures that Tsukasa avoided the monsters and ended up here by pure luck. With that, Asanuma confirms there are no monsters here, but instead there's something else. With that, he yells that instead of monsters, there are violent people like him, and he charges forward. In our protagonist's eyes, we see the pure reflection of the madness on the bully's face. As Anuma attacks with everything he's got, but Tsukasa manages to dodge the blow by a hair. The guy tries to reason with him, saying it's no time for fights, but the bully just doesn't care. He shoots back, saying the world has already gone to heck anyway. For Asanuma, this is a new world where the strong, like him, can do whatever they want. With a psycho smile, he says he wants to test if taking out people also raises his level. Faced with the situation, our protagonist realizes his old classmate has completely lost it. But he also notices that the guy's movements are strange and that he's dodging the traps. The bully realizes he's been noticed and with a mocking smile says he'll tell him his secret. Right after, he shows some kind of device and reveals that's the reason. Our protagonist immediately recognizes the object as a trap locator. He knows that's a rare and very expensive item that normal hunters can't afford. Kanuma shamelessly confesses that he looted the item from a shop in the middle of the chaos. Now, with the device, he boasts that he's already mapped the area and has nothing to fear. Our protagonist decides he's going to catch him by surprise with a forced trap activation. He focuses on an attack-type danger that's right above Asanuma's head. With a shout, the guy activates the trap, and a gigantic magic circle forms on the spot. The bully looks up, surprised to see several metal plates falling toward him. The rain of steel hits the blonde guy dead on, who screams in pain from the attack's impact. So, our protagonist observes the result of his attack with the enemy on the ground. With a slight smile, he thinks he's finally managed to defeat his opponent. He approaches the fallen body to confirm his victory and end the fight once and for all. But suddenly, the guy notices a wicked smile forming on his rival's face. The blonde guy gets up, mocking the pathetic trap, as a pink aura surrounds him. He glares at Tsukasa and remembers the guy mentioned having a trap activation skill. Our protagonist is in shock when he sees a spark on the guy's back and wonders what that is. That's a defense item that creates an invisible barrier to block fatal attacks. With a victorious smile, Asanuma boasts that he already warned our hero. He shows the item and reveals that he looted it from an equipment shop in the middle of all the chaos. With a crazy smile, he yells that with the locator and the invisible shield, he can become an elite hunter. From there, the bully lunges forward and lands a powerful punch right in our protagonist's gut. With the force of the blow, the guy falls to the ground, unable to react to the surprise attack. Asanuma calls him trash and mockingly asks if he had the nerve to attack him from behind. With a psycho look, he says he always taught him the standard procedure during training. The procedure was to land a punch to the gut and make the opponent crawl on the floor. He yells for the Hunter Association to watch, because his legend starts now. But Tsukasa recovers and manages to block the next attack with his arm. Asanuma complains that because he's a D rank, they only send him to crappy, worthless dungeons. He gets angry, saying his power isn't limited and that he'd do great in high-level dungeons. Faced with the situation, our protagonist realizes he's about to get pummeled and needs to do something. With that, a blue aura appears in his hands as he prepares another one of his abilities. He then points at the blonde guy and yells, activating another trap to end the fight. A spiked ball appears in the air, and the bully faces it with a confident smile. The trap comes crashing down, but Asanuma blocks it with his sword, screaming that he's going to get stronger. With an insane look, Asanuma yells that he's going to get even more items in high-level dungeons. Unfazed, our protagonist runs and activates another trap to try and stop him. The blonde guy dodges everything with ease and yells that he's going to finish everyone who looked down on him. Tsukasa realizes it's useless because the guy is reading his attacks perfectly with the locator. He despairs because even if an attack lands, it won't do anything because of the shield. Seeing the enemy's silhouette, he feels cornered and completely out of options to win. Suddenly, a status notification pops up, telling him he has acquired a new ability. He understands that because he used his technique so many times, the skill's proficiency increased without him noticing. The screen reveals his new skill, Trap Creation, which generates new dangers using magic power. Our protagonist feels a tiny bit of hope and thinks that maybe with this he has a chance. Meanwhile, Asanuma calls him trash and gets annoyed at how long the guy is taking to react. The bully asks what that weird pose is, not understanding what Tsukasa is planning to do. Our protagonist remembers the bully's words and says that first comes the punch to the gut. With a look full of hatred, he yells that he's going to give the scumbag exactly what he wants. From there, he decides to use his new power to create and activate a trap on himself. With a shout of determination, he creates a trap on his own body with his new skill. From there, a giant wooden log shoots out of the ground and flies at high speed. Asanuma is in shock, wondering how the heck a trap just appeared out of nowhere. The bully yells that his item didn't detect anything as the log smacks him head-on. With the impact of the blow, the blonde guy is sent flying with no chance to defend himself. Our protagonist celebrates with a smile because his risky plan finally worked. He explains that with his new skill, he can create a trap where there was absolutely nothing before. With this new technique, he realizes he can win and decides to activate the trap one more time. Asanuma panics and yells that it's impossible for a weakling like Tsukasa to create traps out of thin air. The guy says he's sorry, but he's different because he's an S-rank trapmaster. With a confident smile, he prepares a sphere of energy and says that's why he can do it. Right after that, our protagonist uses his trap creation one more time. A magic circle forms behind Asanuma, who screams in pure panic at the situation. A giant wash basin falls from the sky and hits him square on the head with a lot of force. Lying on the ground, the bully is completely confused, wondering what the heck a wash basin is. Our protagonist realizes it's still not enough because this is the limit of his current power. He understands that to create large-scale traps, he needs a lot more magic power. With that, Asanuma starts to laugh and mocks the pathetic wash basin trap. However, Tsukasa reveals that the goal wasn't to hit him and tells the guy to look at his hands. The bully is confused and, not understanding a thing, looks at his own hands to see what's there. Suddenly, a red magic circle forms right under him, activating a trap. Our protagonist explains that there was already a danger in that spot since the beginning of the fight. From there, the blonde guy understands that the wash basin was just bait to lure him to the right place. His eyes widen in pure panic as he realizes he fell right into the guy's plan. A giant saw blade shoots up from the ground, ready to slice the careless prey that fell into the trap. The blade hits him dead on, and the bully screams in pain from the unexpected surprise attack. With his face full of dread, he tries to protect himself from the blow, but it's already too late for that. The saw's impact is so strong that it sends him flying with no chance of defense. Lying on the ground and all beat up, Asanuma groans in pain from the injury he took. In complete desperation, he realizes there's now another trap right behind him. The trap is a wall of needles that attacks anyone who gets close, and it hits him square on. With his face contorted in pain, he keeps screaming as the danger presses him relentlessly. A moment later, he notices yet another trap and tries to run to escape the attack. Desperate, he realizes that if this keeps up, his invisible shield is going to break for good. Pure terror takes over his face because he's surrounded by dangers on all sides. He tries to flee in another direction but soon sees another red magic circle in his path. Just then, a powerful bolt of lightning hits him, electrocuting his body with great force. From the electric shock, his legs give out and he falls to his knees on the ground, completely drained of strength. All busted up, he realizes he's at his limit and that one more hit could be fatal. With nowhere to go, the guy ends up falling right on top of yet another red magic circle. From there, a chain with a sharp hook is fired in his direction at high speed. The unbreakable chain traps him completely, sealing his resistance and all his movements. Our protagonist approaches and mockingly asks if he didn't notice the trap there. With a victorious smile, he reveals that this place has a combo of lethal traps. This mechanism was designed to eliminate even invaders with high durability, just like him. Our protagonist says that this is the grand finale of his deadly trap combo. Faced with the situation, a giant crossbow appears in the sky and aims directly at the terrified bully. In a total panic, Asanuma starts screaming and begging for his life because he doesn't want to be taken out there. Meanwhile, our hero watches the hunting ballista prepare to finish off its cornered prey. The bolt hits the blonde guy's invisible shield dead on, and the barrier starts to crack from the impact. With the power of the attack, the shield shatters into 1,000 pieces, and the bully thinks it's all over for him. The force of the explosion throws the guy backward, breaking the chains that were holding him. By a hair, the bolt misses its target and gets lodged in the ground, destroying the items the bully had looted. On the ground and completely out of it, Asanuma is out for the count and doesn't need a final blow. Tsukasa explains that the shield generator broke because it took too many deadly traps in a row. With that, he walks over and stomps on the trap locator to destroy it once and for all. Our protagonist says that Asanuma's mistake was using up all the item's power on that trap combo. From there, a mysterious light starts to shine from a crack in the wall of the place. The guy looks toward the glow and realizes that's what the traps were protecting. With a determined step, he walks toward the light, because it's what he's been looking for all along. With a smile on his face, he peeks through the crack and celebrates finding what he wanted. Behind the wall, he finds a hidden S-rank treasure chest, which is super rare. These items are incredibly hard to find, and very few hunters ever manage to get one. Because of that, they're worth a fortune, and can completely change the power of whoever owns them. Without wasting any time, our protagonist opens the chest, and a mysterious blue energy flows out from inside it. From there, the energy surrounds his body, and he starts to float in the air with the item's power. Several status screens pop up in front of him, and his magic power starts to increase like crazy. He remembers that his weakness was a lack of power, which is why he couldn't create strong traps. But now, with the Archmage's orb, his magic power jumped from 7 to 27 all at once. With a confident and powerful smile, he decides it's time to test his new strength. Right after that, a giant monster with super sharp claws appears in front of him out of nowhere. There were several praying mantis-like creatures surrounding him with threatening glares. Faced with the situation, he thinks that these are the perfect opponents to test out his new ability. So the guy raises his hand and with a powerful shout, activates his trap creation. 3 magic turrets appear out of thin air and start firing at the monsters with everything they've got. The turrets fire a flame attack called Hellfire that burns everything on the field. With a satisfied smile, he realizes the deadly trap worked because of the orb's power. Suddenly, 2 mysterious guys show up and are startled by the scene of destruction. They're shocked to see the monsters' bodies completely charred by the fire. One of them wonders if there's an S-rank hunter nearby to have done something like that. Hiding, our protagonist recognizes the men as being from the association's defense squad. Another guy comes running up and yells for them to get to the baseball stadium right away. He explains that the main force found the area boss and everyone needs to help take it down. Tsukasa overhears the conversation and is surprised to learn the boss is at the stadium. The area boss is the most powerful monster in the location and the top priority for all hunters. If it's defeated, all the other monsters vanish, and the area becomes a safe zone. Our protagonist believes this rule must also apply to the city that has turned into a dungeon. Without wasting a second, the men run toward the stadium for the big battle that's about to start. With a smile on his face, he decides an opponent like that is worth seeing and resolves to go too. The scene changes, and we see the stadium approaching as night falls over the city. At the stadium, several hunters are fighting armored monsters that seem to be the area's guards. One of them is fighting a giant creature while another yells not to get distracted by the weaker ones. He warns that the area boss is about to arrive and they need to focus on the main threat. A female hunter comments that even though they're weak, for low-rank hunters, they're still pretty tough. With that, she gets scared, wondering just how powerful the real boss must be. Suddenly, a strong tremor shakes the place and everyone goes on high alert. Part of the stadium collapses, and a giant creature emerges from the shadows, scaring everyone. The creature's mouth starts to glow with a red energy, preparing a powerful attack. The monster reveals itself to be a giant red dragon that glares at the hunters with hatred. Without mercy, the creature fires a blast of fire that hits one of the hunters dead on. The others are in shock at the power of the attack and the absurd strength of that boss. They look at each other, terrified, because they know they have zero chance against a monster of that level. One of the leaders yells for everyone to evacuate because the stadium is collapsing and the boss has arrived. With its imposing wings, the dragon shows that it's the true king of this place. Desperate, the hunters run for their lives while the leader hurries everyone along. With its powerful tail, the dragon destroys part of the stadium's bleachers with a single swipe. The force of the impact sends the hunters flying, and they scream in pain from the surprise attack. The female hunter runs desperately to help her partner who was hit and fell to the ground. Looking at the scene of destruction, she realizes they don't have the slightest chance of beating the creature. With its glowing red eyes, the monster looks at the humans as if they were mere insects. The young woman despairs because she knows the power of that thing is on a whole different level. And so the creature shows off all its might and power as the true king of that area. Just then, our protagonist arrives on the scene and is surprised to see the boss on top of a building. Without a second thought, he places his hand on the ground and yells for the giant monster to wait for him. With a confident smile, he announces that he's going to prepare a deadly trap for the creature right now. From there, the guy runs toward the dragon to put his risky plan into action. He thinks that if he can defeat that creature, the battle in the area will be over for good. With that, he decides to end it all, using the power of a true trapmaster. Our protagonist then comes face to face with the dragon, preparing for the final fight. Meanwhile, the other hunters scream for him to get out of there, and one of them calls for the medical team. One of the leaders yells for the artillery squad not to hesitate and to fire with everything they've got. From there, several fire arrows are launched all at once toward the giant monster. The concentrated attack hits the dragon square in the head with immense force and power. With a sliver of hope, the leader celebrates and wonders if they manage to hit the beast. To everyone's surprise, the creature isn't even fazed by the attack and seems perfectly fine. Our protagonist realizes the thing has auto-regeneration and healed all the damage instantly. He understands that to defeat a monster like this, you need to land a single fatal blow all at once. Tsukasa thinks Asanuma's invisible guard was already a pain, but this is way worse. Even so, he doesn't give up and believes with all his might that this opponent isn't invincible. With a plan in mind, he yells for the area boss to come at him with everything it has. The female hunter is surprised by the guy's attitude and decides to join in, yelling too. She thinks that even if she can't help with the attack, she can at least be bait for the team. The dragon turns to her and fires a heat blast in her direction without any warning. In a total panic, the young woman closes her eyes and thinks this is it for her this time. Suddenly, she opens her eyes and realizes she survived the attack in some mysterious way. All of a sudden, our protagonist appears and holds her in his arms, leaving the girl in shock. A teleportation magic circle surrounds them, and the hunter asks where on earth they are. He calmly explains that he saved her using a space warp trap right in the nick of time. That's the hazard warp, a trap that unexpectedly sends the target somewhere else. Normally, this skill is a real pain in the neck, but if controlled, it can be used for emergency rescues. The girl asks who he is, but our hero says there's no time for explanations right now. He then backs away and asks her to use the radio to inform all the squads of the situation. The warning is that a certain hunter will fight the boss alone and lead it into the city. The hunter is outraged because they lured the creature away precisely to protect the civilians. He retorts that the evacuation is already over, and the city can become a battlefield. The girl is speechless as she watches the mysterious guy run back into danger. Meanwhile, at the stadium, the dragon continues to destroy everything with its uncontrolled fury. The creature roars in anger for not being able to hit its target with the fire attack. One of the hunters runs to help his friend who was injured in the middle of all the chaos. The leader says it's no use because the creature's regeneration will finish them all. Suddenly, a metal wash basin falls from the sky and hits the dragon square on the head. This is the wash basin drop, a trap that humiliates the target with a comedic blow. Our protagonist faces the beast and yells for the creature to look at him, once and for all. With a taunting smile, he offers to be the creature's opponent anytime. The dragon roars in fury and prepares another one of its powerful fire blasts. Seeing this, the other hunters panic and wonder what that guy is thinking. A moment later, the boss unleashes its fire attack with everything it's got at our hero. Tsukasa runs through the flames, dodging the blow with surprising agility. The hunters are in shock watching the scene and wonder if he has a flight skill. However, the leader says no, that's not it, because he saw what really happened there. He noticed that our protagonist used a trampoline trap to jump into the air. Our hero thinks that he used a support trap to dodge the heat ray. That's the rising spring, a trap that launches the prey into the sky and helps with aerial combat. So he activates his trap creation once more while still in the air. From there, a new magic trampoline forms, and he gets ready for his next move. With that, he uses the trampoline to launch himself and land right on the dragon's head. Our protagonist lands perfectly on the giant creature, which roars in pure rage. With a determined look, he shouts that he's going to take the monster with him to a special place. From there, he creates 2 energy spheres and uses them to bind the dragon with a magic rope. And so, he starts to guide the creature to the grand mechanism that will lead it to its doom. With a confident smile, he flies through the city, dragging the monster to his final trap. Meanwhile, one of the hunters yells into the radio that the area boss has left the stadium. He warns that the beast is destroying the residential area, and the hunter next to him gets worried. The young woman realizes they are heading toward the city's power substation. Seeing this, Tsukasa thinks the situation is now beyond the other hunter's control. Suddenly, the dragon fires another blast of fire, and he screams in fright at the surprise attack. The blow hits him dead on, and he's thrown back onto the creature's head with full force. With his face full of panic, he realizes his plan is starting to go wrong. With no time to waste, he raises his hand and activates his trap creation one more time. Our protagonist creates a new danger right on the beast's snout to try and save himself. The trap teleports him away, and he dodges the monster's attack by a hair. With a perfect landing, our protagonist celebrates because the teleport worked perfectly. He faces the beast and thinks he's just a little bit away from the grand mechanism he prepared. From there, the guy places his hand on the ground and says he's about to serve the main course. And so Tsukasa screams, activating his trap creation one last time with everything he has. Several purple magic circles appear out of nowhere, surrounding the giant creature on all sides. A sharp hook with a chain is the first danger to appear for the beast. Right after, the unbreakable chains bind the dragon, sealing its movements. With the monster immobilized, a pendulum with a giant axe swings down toward it with full force. The iron axe pendulum trap hits the beast head-on with a devastating blow. Right after, a giant saw blade shoots up from the ground to slice the dragon once and for all. The running saw hits the creature with great force, dealing an absurd amount of damage to the monster. Our protagonist explains that those are large-scale, special-grade deadly traps. But he knows that because of the beast's regeneration, that won't be the final blow. Seeing this, he runs toward the dragon and says he's going to use even more intense attacks. With a battle cry, he activates his trap creation once more with everything he's got. From there, a relentless rain of boulders starts to bombard the dragon without stopping. Right after, several fire turrets appear and fire at the creature with full force. The monster is hit dead on by the combination of rocks and flames with no chance to defend itself. Our protagonist shouts that this is a hell of rocks and flames for the beast. He says that these are the strongest traps he can create at the moment. With the dragon cornered, he warns that the creature's regeneration won't be able to keep up. With no way out, the monster tries to escape by flying into the sky to get away from the continuous attack. Our hero then tells it to fly into the sky of doom, where the grand mechanism awaits. With a victorious smile, he points upward and says the final trap is right there. With his hand glowing blue, he shouts with all his might to activate the last danger. Suddenly, the sky darkens, and a mysterious energy begins to form among the clouds. An intense light appears in the sky and faces the dragon, which is flying straight to its doom. The thunder spear pierces the flying prey with a celestial and devastating blow. The bolt hits the monster square in the chest, causing massive damage and ending the fight. He explains that this is the thunder spear trap, and it's the strongest one in this area. Our protagonist reveals that he knew about this danger from the very beginning. From the electric shock, the giant creature starts to fall from the sky at high speed. But even with the powerful blow, the beast's eye is still glowing, showing it's not over. A red aura surrounds the monster as it recovers and roars in fury at the attack. The creature charges with everything it's got, and Tsukasa uses a trampoline to reposition himself in the air. The dragon thinks the guy is just counterattacking in a final act of desperation. But our hero reveals that the spear's power isn't its only special feature. With that, he creates an iron axe pendulum to destroy the transmission tower. His plan is to release all the high-voltage energy in the area at once. The spear in the beast's chest would act like a lightning rod, attracting all the electricity. From there, the combination creates a massive blow, perfect for taking out the area boss. The creature is completely engulfed by the purple energy with nowhere to escape. With a shout, our protagonist tells the dragon to burn to ashes with all that power. That was the fatal blow, because the tower's energy reacted with the spear and fried the monster. Our protagonist watches the explosion and thinks he couldn't have pulled that off in a normal dungeon. He realizes that the transmission tower was an unexpected trap for the monster. With a satisfied smile, the guy lands on the ground, ready for whatever comes next. He walks past the dragon's body and reflects that if the world turned into a dungeon, things like this happen. The guy concludes that the beast was already trapped from the moment it invaded their world. With the mission complete, a status screen appears, and his level increases like crazy. He thinks that he finally proved his power is real by clearing the area all by himself. From there, he remembers the last 2 grim years of taking non-stop beatings from Asanuma. He also remembers the days he spent studying dungeons and worrying his family. In a flashback, his brother calls and tells him not to push himself so hard because his mom is worried. Even while thanking him for the support, our protagonist says on the phone that he never gave up. In truth, he's always been excluded by everyone, ever since he was just a little kid. With a serious look on his face, he stares at the horizon, ready for a new beginning. With the death of the boss, all the other monsters in the area start to disappear. Peace returns to the city, and as he's walking, something strange happens to his foot. Standing before the dragon's body, our protagonist thinks about his next big goal. Without wasting time, he decides to go to the Hunter Association's communications base. That place had its communication systems down because of the break. But now that the dungeon has been conquered, he believes the communication satellite is working again. Arriving at the communications room, he finds a door locked by an electronic keypad. To solve the problem, our protagonist decides to use his trap creation ability, so he creates a utility stun that disables the lock with a shock. He says he's sorry for breaking in, but since it's an emergency, he decides to enter the room. Inside, the guy finds the association's communications room and several monitors. With a sigh of relief, he sees that thankfully, the machines are still working. As he sits down, he celebrates, because the security has been disabled and he doesn't need a fingerprint. From there, he reboots the system that crashed because of the communication disruption. The computer starts a field scan to load the area's information. The analysis reveals that the area was A-level and that the dungeon has been completely conquered. Our protagonist then reflects that the high difficulty makes sense because of the monsters. With a keen eye, he notices something strange on the screen that catches his attention. The system isn't just analyzing his area, but all the dungeons in the country. From there, the guy understands that an area is basically a region divided by city. Since the whole world turned into a dungeon, he wonders if the system will analyze everything. In theory, it would be possible to divide and analyze all the dungeon areas in the entire world. Suddenly, the computer finishes its calculation, and our protagonist wonders if it's already done. However, an error pops up because the data is huge, and he can only see a 100-kilometer radius. Even without the global information, he needs to know what's happening in his region. It turns out his precious mother and his younger sister are scattered in different locations. Desperate, he tries to find out the danger level of the area where his family lives. In front of the monitors, he anxiously waits for the system's answer about the location. To his astonishment, all the areas that appear show a conquest difficulty of level A. His eyes widen in pure shock at the information he just received. Our protagonist stands up in a panic because everything around him is extremely high difficulty, and so he fears that only his city is safe and the rest has already been devastated. In a cry of despair, he realizes the signal isn't one of total annihilation. The screen shows that the Sugitatsu area, despite having an A-level difficulty, has already been conquered. Right after, he observes that other areas have also been cleared or are in the process. He understands that in various locations, hunters have defeated the bosses and restored communication. With a sigh of relief, our protagonist finally understands the whole situation. From there, it hits him that he's not alone, and other heroes are also in the battle. Even with the total chaos, several conquerors are emerging to fight against the monsters. Our protagonist then wonders if a new war of conquest has truly begun. He notices that there are already several areas where the monsters have been completely eliminated, and so he deduces that S-rank hunters from other districts are fighting bravely. Seeing this, our hero calms down a bit, but his worry is still there. His priority now is to confirm his family's safety, so he searches for his mother. The screen shows that her area has been conquered, and he believes he can contact her now. In the middle of the destroyed street, the sound of a ringing phone echoes, bringing a glimmer of hope. He finally manages to talk to his mother and desperately asks if she's okay. His mom says the hunters handled the situation over there, but is worried about her son. Our protagonist calms her down and says he's fine, but asks about his sister Shiori. His mom gets a worried expression and says the call connected for just a moment. Right after, the call dropped due to signal interference, leaving the guy tense. With that, he yells for his mom not to leave where she is, for her safety. Now that his mother is safe, he focuses on finding his sister Shiori and thinks about the interference. He remembers she lives in the school dorm in the West Ward and starts searching. The screen shows that the West Ward dungeon hasn't been conquered yet, and there's a notification. Our protagonist wonders what that special notification from the local hunters could be. The message says the boss is still active, but the crisis has passed, and they have control. Suddenly, a guy appears on screen saying they're no longer the association's pawns. Seeing this, our hero realizes this isn't an official communication, and someone has hacked it. The man then declares that the people of the West Ward are founding an independent nation. He's in shock because his sister Shiori's district just declared independence. Suddenly, he spins around, startled, because he noticed something strange behind him at that moment. Through the door, he sees the silhouette of an intruder and realizes the entry lock has been broken. With no time to waste, our protagonist decides that gathering intel is over and creates a trap. With that, he focuses his escape to the rooftop of the Hunter Association's communications base. From there, a purple magic circle forms on one of the boxes on top of the building. This is the Scramble Leap trap, which teleports him to a random location to escape. Out of breath, he manages an emergency escape, but his magic power is at its limit. Although the rare item increased his magic, it only raised his maximum capacity. Because of the intense battle against the area boss, his energy is almost completely drained. Looking at the city, he thinks it's still not enough, and his cell phone starts to ring. Seeing this, the guy picks up the device to see who's calling at that moment. To his surprise, the screen shows an incoming call from his younger sister, Shiori. Without a second thought, he answers the phone and prays that she's safe and sound. Her voice is full of static, and he realizes it's that signal interference. As expected, the area conquest isn't over yet, and he yells, asking if she's okay. With a failing voice, Shiori says she's safe and tells him to focus on himself. Suddenly, The call drops, and our protagonist is left looking at his phone, deep in thought. He wonders how she can say she's safe if there are still monsters over there. On top of that, the suspicious broadcast from the local hunters makes him even more distrustful. Because of this, he decides he can't worry about his drained magic power right now. With a determined look, he shouts that he's going to confirm Shiori's safety with his own eyes. The scene changes to a hunter base that has become a temporary shelter for civilians. One of the guys yells for everyone to load the supplies because the evacuees need help. Just then, a man notices that the magic power recovery potions are running low. Our protagonist then drinks one of the potions he grabbed to recover his energy. He thinks he'll just borrow a few, because if he does his part, it won't be a problem. With a final gulp, he finishes drinking the green liquid to prepare for his journey. Right after, his magic power is fully restored and he feels ready for a fight. He analyzes the map and realizes that to get to the West Ward, he needs to pass through 2 other areas. According to the base's information, the Kawabe and Iwatani dungeons haven't been cleared yet. Seeing this, he understands that fighting monsters along the way will be unavoidable. He questions if he can cross the areas alone with his current stats. If he faces another area boss, he knows he'll be in big trouble because his magic might run out. To prevent that from happening, our protagonist knows exactly what he needs to do. With a confident smile, he decides he needs to level up to increase his magic capacity. And so, he heads for the Kawabe ward, determined to level up no matter what it takes. As he steps over the border, a blue light appears, marking the start of his dangerous journey. From there, his first mission as a hunter, the dungeon crossing, finally begins. A world that was peaceful just a few days ago has now turned into a dungeon with dangerous areas. Even if one area is cleared, the neighboring one has another boss, and the battle continues endlessly. He enters the Kawabe ward, a place where the dungeon hasn't been conquered and monsters can appear. Suddenly, 2 guys appear, and one of them points, saying he looks like a hunter, just like them. They approach and ask if our protagonist has any rare items because they're out of gear. Tsukasa says no, and the guy complains that everyone says the same thing with a disappointed look. With that, the man says there's no other way and activates a claw weapon on his hand, ready to attack. Our protagonist is in shock as he realizes he's walked right into an ambush by bad guy hunters. The bad guy hunter warns him he's about to get hurt and lunges forward with his claws. Because of this, our protagonist dodges the man's fast, slashing attacks by a hair. With a serious look, he realizes these guys aren't normal hunters, but straight-up thugs. A moment later, the 2 criminals attack together to try and catch Tsukasa once and for all. Faced with the situation, the guy decides to use his trap creation to deal with the threat. The thug smirks confidently as he sees the purple magic circle forming right above him. From there, a giant boulder falls from the sky and crushes the 2 men with disastrous weight. The 2 hunters are pinned to the ground, unable to move because of the trap. Our protagonist then wonders if taking out humans would also grant experience points. He thinks the possibility isn't 0 and needs to keep a close eye on violent hunters. But Tsukasa decides he doesn't need to fight people and will focus only on the area's monsters. With a confident smile, he decides to test a specific trap for farming experience. The scene changes to the Kawabe Ward Plaza, where 2 robot monsters are firing red beams. A woman passing by screams in panic as she's almost hit by the powerful attack. The robotic creature then turns to her and seems to be confused by something. The monster is confused because it's hearing the sound of a whistle coming from somewhere. Turns out, that's a whistle doll, a trap that lures monsters with its sound. Hiding in a tree, Tsukasa thinks that with this trap, all the monsters will gather together. Soon, 4 creatures assemble, and he thinks that's still not enough to farm experience. So the guy decides to create one more danger to deal with the robots that showed up. Suddenly, a purple energy emerges from the ground and scares all the monsters that were there. One of the creatures tries to escape, but ends up getting zapped by the magic trap on the ground. The shock is so strong that the monster is left completely paralyzed, unable to move. At that, a cage appears out of nowhere, and a lock seals the passage, trapping the targets. The iron cage trap captures the 4 monsters who scream in despair at the situation. Our protagonist then approaches the cage to begin the next phase of his plan. With a confident smile, he gets ready and says that the trap creation is about to begin. From there, a mirror of white light appears in front of one of the monsters trapped in the cage. The creature stares at its own reflection in the mirror and is frozen, staring at the image. A moment later, the robot starts to disintegrate into dust particles. Not understanding a thing, that's the copy mirror trap, which reflects and multiplies the monsters trapped in the cage. With a wicked smile, our protagonist thinks that a trap like this is the worst of them all. Normally, a danger that multiplies enemies would be something no one would want to find. But for Tsukasa, inside the cage, it doesn't matter, and he tells the creatures to multiply. He yells for the monsters to continue the process until the cage is completely full. His logic is simple. The more enemies he defeats, the more experience points he'll gain. With a determined look, the guy says he's going to finish them all at once and get stronger. From there, the cage gets packed with robots screaming in despair from being squeezed together. Facing the full cage, he prepares to activate the final mechanism and end the party. And so, our hero activates his trap creation one last time with everything he's got. A giant magic circle forms right above the cage and glows with a purple energy. The monsters inside are terrified because they realize something terrible is about to happen. A giant boulder falls from the sky and crushes the cage with disastrous large-scale weight. With a satisfied smile, Tsukasa celebrates because his trap-sweeping technique worked. He then names his strategy of multiplying and crushing monsters the Experience Cube. He gets hyped because he defeated dozens or even hundreds of monsters with his plan. At that, several status screens pop up and he levels up like crazy. Besides leveling up, he's surprised because he also acquired a new ability. The screen reveals his new skill, Trap Domination, which controls trap-type monsters, so he reads the description carefully to understand how the new power works. Our protagonist understands that with this, he can turn monsters into his allies. Suddenly, he stops walking because he notices something strange moving nearby. That's a survivor from his attack, and he thinks it's perfect for testing his new skill. With a confident smile, he gets ready to use the ability and see if it works. From there, a green magic circle forms in his hand, ready to be activated. With a powerful shout, he activates Trap Domination with everything he has. The green energy hits the creature, but to his surprise, the power is instantly repelled. He's in shock because the ability simply doesn't work, and the monster isn't dominated. Tsukasa then rereads the description and realizes the skill only works on trap-type monsters. Because of this, the technique is useless against normal monsters and won't do any good. Unable to use the new skill, he creates a finishing sword that defeats the monster for good. With that, he thinks that now that he's leveled up, he needs to find his sister Shiori and investigate the area. He decides he's put off what he needs to do for too long, and it's time to act. And so, our protagonist places his hand on the ground, which glows with an intense blue aura. From there, the guy activates his scan to search for traps that already exist in the location. With his special vision, he analyzes the area to know where the dangers are and what type they are. The scan reveals a museum where several traps are concentrated in a single place. Looking deeper, he's shocked to discover an underground passage that's several kilometers long. His eyes sparkle because he can't believe a structure like that exists beneath the ground. With a smile, our protagonist gets up, as he seems to have understood what that means. Faced with the situation, he realizes he has no other choice but to go to that museum. Without wasting time, the guy starts walking toward his next big objective. He then enters a dark and dense forest to get to his destination faster. Suddenly, Tsukasa stops walking and turns around, startled by something he saw there. He's surprised to find a huge lake right in the middle of that dark forest. Because of the lake, he deduces that the museum must be very close to that spot. A moment later, our protagonist finds the building and celebrates having found the place. He believes the underground passage is under the building, and his intuition is right. Without wasting time, the guy enters the museum, and the door closes behind him with a thud. According to his scan, the inside of the building is completely filled with traps. Because of this, he decides to walk very carefully to not accidentally trigger any dangers. Suddenly, he notices a chest moving and yells that the creature was being way too obvious the whole time. And so, he decides to use his new trap domination ability on the monster. The green energy hits the chest, which is surprised and frozen by the skill's power. Our protagonist is happy because the technique worked, and now he has a new ally. As he suspected, it's a mimic, a monster disguised as a treasure chest. This creature pretends to be a chest to attack hunters, and its very existence is a trap. He was able to see the creature clearly because of the scan, and he understands what that means. With a victorious smile, our protagonist celebrates because the domination was a huge success. From then on, the mimic becomes his ally, and a green emblem appears to seal the pact. Suddenly, the mimic jumps on top of our protagonist, who is in shock from the attack. He panics because he thinks the creature is attacking him and that his skill failed. With that, the guy is knocked to the ground and thinks he let his guard down and it's all over for him. The impact throws him hard to the floor and he screams in pain from the unexpected fall. Lying on the ground, he complains about the pain but realizes the monster is just sitting on his lap. The creature then makes a cute face, as if it were a little puppy, and lets out an adorable sound. A moment later, the little thing clings to our protagonist's leg, leaving him completely confused. He then realizes that the creature seems to be attached to him in some weird way. The little monster continues to make cute sounds as if it's happy to have a new owner. The whole situation makes our hero a little uncomfortable, but he tries not to mind it. Although it's kind of bizarre, he confirms that the domination worked, and the monster became his ally. Now with the skill confirmed, he opens a trapdoor and prepares to head into the underground passage. Our protagonist goes down the stairs with his new ally right behind him for the next phase. He realizes that such a large passage didn't exist here before and was created when the district became a dungeon. And so, he deduces that if a space was created, it must have a purpose, like a secret shortcut. So he believes this passage is the best way to avoid fighting at every turn. With a serious look, our protagonist hopes his theory about the shortcut is right. But he knows that in exchange for speed, this path surely hides enormous dangers. Looking at his new companion, the guy decides he can't just call him Mimic anymore. From then on, with a smile on his face, he names the little creature Mimi. The little monster seems to have really liked the name and looks at him with big shiny eyes. Suddenly, Mimi jumps on him, and our hero wonders why it's so happy. He then warns his new partner to get ready because the journey from here on out will be dangerous. The little creature makes a confident sound, showing it's more than ready for the fight. Our protagonist understands he'll have help, and with that, he feels much safer to continue. With determination, he approaches the giant door and opens it to see what's on the other side. As he opens a crack, he comes face to face with a dark silhouette and a very sinister purple energy. The figure reveals itself to be a giant knight with imposing and frightening armor. A torch on the wall lights up the area, revealing a few more details of the place. Before him, our protagonist observes a knight statue very similar to the monster. He analyzes the room and notices that there's only the statue and the exit door at the far end. With that, our protagonist starts to walk slowly with Mimi following close behind. He carefully approaches the knight statue to see what will happen. With a focused look, he was already expecting something strange to happen at any moment. Suddenly, the stone statue comes to life and raises its sword to attack with everything it's got. Without wasting time, the guy activates one of his abilities, creating a purple aura in his hand. A moment later, a stone wall appears and successfully blocks the monster's blow. The creature is unfazed and prepares to launch another powerful attack against him. But the magic wall can't withstand the force and begins to crack from the blade's impact. Tsukasa then confirms that just as he thought, this is a trap-type monster. He already knew there was a high-level danger in the room because of his previous scan. The problem is that his domination doesn't work on statues, and he needed the creature to transform. Because of this, he approached on purpose, but something unexpected catches him by surprise. The creature moves incredibly fast and appears right behind him, ready to attack again. Faced with this, our protagonist creates an iron wall to defend himself from the surprise blow. He's shocked because the thing is way too strong, and his iron wall shatters into pieces. With that, the creature charges at high speed toward our protagonist. He manages to dodge by a hair but realizes the monster is incredibly fast. The knight moves in random trajectories, leaving the guy very confused by its tactic. With these erratic movements, he realizes the monster is aiming for something. His eyes widen as he understands that the creature's target is his blind spot. And so, he creates a diamond shield to block the attack on his back at the last second. At that, he confirms that the creature is definitely aiming for his back to attack. But since it's a trap monster, he knows he doesn't have to fight it head-on to win. With a plan in mind, he prepares to use his trap domination on the creature. The green energy hits the knight dead-on, who is paralyzed by the ability's power. The skill's power completely envelops it, and our hero believes the fight is finally over. However, he's shocked to realize that even though it hit, the technique isn't working. With a look of panic, he wonders why the heck his domination was completely nullified. From there, he understands that his skills level is still too low for high-level monsters. Despite the failure, he doesn't give up and decides he's going to keep trying until it works. With that, he believes that if he hits the creature several times, the skill should work. From there, he tries to use trap domination one more time with everything he has. But he gets frustrated because the monster is way too fast, and the first hit was just luck. So he realizes he needs to read the creature's trajectory to land the technique. Our protagonist then focuses and thinks there must be a way to win. With a new idea, he puts his hand on the ground to create a trap and lure the creature. From there, he uses his trap creation to set the stage for his plan. The knight charges to attack, but our hero dodges at the last second. Suddenly, the creature stops moving and is completely drenched in water. His grand trap is a basin of water that soaks the knight without causing any damage. The monster stands still, completely confused by what just happened there. With the floor all wet, the knight attacks in a fury, and the guy dodges by a hair. Our protagonist gets ready because his real plan is about to begin. With a smile, he realizes the joke trap made the monster furious. The knight charges once more, but now it doesn't seem as fast as before. Turns out, because it's all wet, its movements leave water trails on the floor. With that, our protagonist can finally see where the creature is moving. He understands that by following the watermarks, he can read the monster's behavior pattern. And so, he aims where the creature will be and uses his trap domination again. The green energy hits the knight dead-on, which tries to resist the ability's power. The monster is hit, but doesn't seem fazed and continues to advance with its sword. But Tsukasa doesn't give up and keeps using his domination non-stop to stack the effects. He believes that if he keeps hitting the creature, the technique's effects will accumulate. With one last battle cry, he launches another one of his powerful dominations at the monster. Our hero is confident that sooner or later, the ability will finally work. With a determined look, he shouts that he's going to make that high-level creature his ally. Meanwhile, Mimi hides behind a pillar, watching the battle from a distance. The knight stops moving, and the guy is out of breath after using his skill so much. With his mana bar almost empty, he realizes he only has enough energy for one more shot. Faced with the situation, he wonders if he can finish the fight with his last chance. The creature doesn't give him time to think and charges once more to attack with everything it has. With that, our protagonist decides he's going to bet everything on that last desperate shot. He then yells with all his strength for the ability to finally work for good. And so, the guy uses his trap domination with the energy he has left. The knight charges for the final blow while our hero prepares his counterattack. With a cry of determination, he fires the ability that will decide the outcome of the battle. From there, a huge explosion of green energy hits the monster dead-on with everything. At that, a dense smoke covers the entire battlefield, making it impossible to see anything. Out of breath, our protagonist tries to see the result of his risky plan. He notices the knight's movements have stopped and wonders if the technique worked. A moment later, the monster's killer aura starts to fade very quickly. With a smile of relief, he celebrates because his subjugation was a total success. From there, the creature drives its sword into the ground with a dull, imposing thud. To his surprise, the knight kneels and apologizes to its new master. Our protagonist is in shock because the creature was able to speak to him. Still surprised, the guy asks who the heck it really is to have that ability. To his surprise, the knight starts to take off her helmet, revealing who's underneath. Under the heavy armor was actually a beautiful elf with long white hair. The warrior reveals herself completely, showing her imposing and powerful appearance. Faced with the revelation, our protagonist is left speechless by what he just discovered. The elf says she is no one and asks him to give her a name and accept her as his servant. A little awkwardly, the guy agrees and thinks she needs a fitting name. With a smile, he decides that from now on, her name will be Jean. The elf is moved and repeats the name John with pure happiness on her face. With great honor, she accepts the name and asks to be called that from now on. Suddenly, our protagonist is startled by a strange noise that comes out of nowhere. The sound was actually little Mimi, who screams in pure jealousy at the scene. The little monster charges with everything at John, who faces it with complete calm. Calmly, the elf holds Mimi and says that he is the senior here, and she will respect his position. Our protagonist is confused by the scene and realizes that even monsters have a hierarchy. Seeing this, it dawns on him that it's no time for that, and they need to hurry. But Giant stops him from continuing and asks her new master to wait a bit. The elf explains that by defeating her, the next event has been triggered, and the boss battle is about to begin. In a panic, our hero asks what she's talking about, and the warrior says the boss is about to awaken. With a serious look, she reveals that she is the guardian of this dungeon, and her function is to protect the place. Therefore, her transformation into a monster and the fight against him served as a signal for the boss. The elf adds that the battle is inevitable, and it's impossible to leave without defeating the monster. Our protagonist despairs because he thought he had chosen the easiest path to escape. Without a second thought, he decides he's going to give up on the passage and go back to the surface. However, John warns with a serious look that it won't work at all. She explains that the door can no longer be moved by human strength because retreat is impossible. From there, the warrior points forward and says the only way is to the boss's room. At that, our hero retorts that fighting is impossible because he's out of magic power. Suddenly, Mimi pokes him, and the guy turns to see what his little ally wants. Mimi then opens its mouth and starts to spit something out for its master. Our protagonist is surprised because the little monster hands him a magic potion. To his surprise, it's a magic power recovery potion, which he desperately needed. With a smile, he realizes that Mimi has a storage function and can hold anything. From there, he takes the potion and feels completely prepared for the next battle. Jing then asks if he can use advanced water magic, because without it, it's pointless. She explains that the area boss is like the incarnation of flames and needs a concentrated water attack. Our protagonist says water magic is difficult, and the trap he used on her is his limit. With that, he starts to think of a strategy, and suddenly Mimi gets his attention. The little monster makes a questioning face, and our hero seems to have a new idea. He then asks John if the door can't be opened by humans, and she confirms it. With a confident smile on his face, our protagonist seems to have a new plan in mind. He then asks if monsters like her and Mimi could open the door for them to escape. The elf replies that if it's monsters, a retreat would probably be possible. Suddenly, a strong tremor shakes the place, and the two go on alert. John explains that the master of the dungeon lost its patience and decided to attack with everything. A moment later, the large door at the end of the room is engulfed in flames and begins to break. The elf then yells for her master to use a defense magic because the flames are coming. With no time to waste, our protagonist creates a purple barrier to protect himself from the attack. From there, a huge explosion of fire destroys the door and engulfs the entire room. The flames surround the two from all sides, and our hero realizes the danger he's in. With his magic shield, he protects his allies from the fire that burns everything to ashes. Looking at the scene, the guy is surprised to see that the flames form a giant phoenix in the air. He's shocked by so much power and realizes the entire room is starting to fall apart. With that, our protagonist creates a blue energy shield to protect himself from the debris. The ceiling continues to collapse, but the protective barrier manages to withstand the impact. After the dust settles, they realize they're on top of a large magic circle. With a serious look on his face, Tsukasa seems to understand what's about to happen. Before them, a giant creature made of pure fire appears, and Jean calls it the boss. That is the monster known as the incarnation of fire, and the true boss of the area. From there, our protagonist realizes the whole place is starting to collapse. With that, he knows he can't just stand there and needs to move before everything comes down. Looking at Mimi, he says he has a favor to ask and wants his ally to act alone. He then whispers for the little monster to go back the way they came and get out of there. But John screams in desperation because the area boss is preparing a new attack. The fire creature roars in fury and charges at them with everything it has, leaving no chance for defense. Even in this dangerous situation, our protagonist faces the monster with a determined look. And so he pushes Mimi toward the door for the little monster to escape in time. Now alone, the guy and the elf prepare to face the incarnation of fire. Looking back, our hero shouts with worry, asking about his little companion. To his relief, he sees that Mimi is running safely toward the exit door. His plan is that because he's human, the door would lock and prevent him from escaping. But the elf said that allied monsters like Mimi could open the door and go back. With this hope, our protagonist shouts that now everything depends on his little monster. Facing the boss, he activates his trap creation to start the battle for real. The trap he creates is a mysterious wormhole that can spit out objects. The fire boss wastes no time and launches an attack with everything it has at them. At that, the guy yells to Jean that a second wave of attacks is coming. The creature then shoots several fireballs from its mouth at high speed. To protect him, the elf gets in front and uses her sword to slice through the flames. With a swift movement, the warrior manages to defend her master from the creature's attack. With a smile, our protagonist thanks John for her help at that moment. He then says he doesn't need help dodging anymore, and that he'll be the bait. The plan is for John to attack the monster's left leg to immobilize it. The elf accepts the order and says she will complete the mission even if it costs her life. He thinks that now the rest of the plan depends on little Mimi getting the job done. The first order was to get out of the museum the same way they came in before. Right after, the creature runs at high speed through the dark forest. Its final destination is the large lake on the other side of that forest. With a determined look, the little monster prepares to carry out its great mission. Arriving at the lake's edge, Mimi gets ready to execute its master's order. With a great leap, the creature throws itself into the water to complete the final part of the plan. Meanwhile, the fire boss roars in fury and prepares for another attack. The creature attacks, and our protagonist creates a diamond shield to defend himself. Struggling to hold back the blow, he screams in desperation, asking for Jane. The elf then shouts that she's found an opening and that now is the time to carry out the order. And so she charges forward and slashes the creature's leg with her sharp sword. The boss roars in pain from the surprise blow it just took from the warrior. Seizing the chance, our hero uses his wormhole to trap the monster. With that, the beast's movements are sealed, and it gets stuck under the trap. He thinks that now the rest depends on Mimi and that special item it's carrying. Deep in the lake, Mimi opens its mouth and reveals what it was holding the whole time. That was the other wormhole, which will connect to the first one he created. When it's placed at the bottom of the lake, the trap connects to the exit in the dungeon. Faced with the situation, the fire boss is now completely trapped with nowhere to go. With the plan in action, the fire creature feels a drop of water fall on its head. The monster then stares at the wormhole, not understanding what the heck is going on. Looking at the scene, our protagonist gives a slight smile because his plan worked perfectly. The boss is surprised to realize that a huge amount of water is about to come down. From there, the lake water comes pouring down and hits the creature with absurd force. The monster tries to protect itself, but its flames start to go out from the power of the water. And so, the entire place starts to get flooded by the waterfall that has formed there. Tsukasa then yells for John to get behind him so she doesn't get swept away by the current. With no time to waste, he places his hand on the ground and activates his trap creation again. From there, a giant wall appears in front of them to block the flow of water. The prison wall is a trap that blocks anything coming from the outside. With the situation under control, he celebrates because his water torture was a total success. He explains that to beat the boss, he would have needed an army of water mages. Because of that, the only way out was to use the lake outside and send Mimi over there. With the wormhole in the lake, he managed to connect the 2 points and bring the water in. The fire boss screams in pain as the water relentlessly extinguishes its flames. The creature tries to resist, but its body of fire starts to fall apart from the water. With the flames extinguished, a glowing core appears in the giant monster's chest. Jane shouts that the enemy's core has appeared and they need to destroy it now. At that, our protagonist gets ready to use his trap creation. With a shout, he creates a finishing sword from a magic circle. The sword flies at high speed to deliver the final blow to the weakened creature. The blow hits the core dead on, and the boss's body starts to turn to stone. A moment later, the creature collapses, and the waterfall finally stops pouring. With the enemy defeated, the wormhole in the ceiling starts to close slowly. On the other side, Mimi closes the portal in the lake with its special ability. With that, our protagonist and Jen can finally relax a little. Suddenly, little Mimi pops out of a puddle of water and makes a cute celebratory sound. With a smile, they celebrate because the subjugation of the area boss was a complete success. With that, he thanks his little ally, but something strange happens to his hand. Suddenly, Mimi squeals with joy, and our protagonist kneels down, surprised by an object. A dagger shrouded in magic power was stuck right in the stone body of the boss. John then explains that's the area's hidden item and asks him to accept it. Our protagonist is thoughtful because he's never heard of an item like that before. With that, he wonders if it's an ultra-rare treasure that's hard to get. The elf reveals that the item was at the bottom of the lake and came through the portal with the water. With a victorious smile, the guy holds his new and powerful reward in his hands. He then reflects that he would have never imagined an item like that at the bottom of that lake. The screen reveals the weapon's name as Mystic Light Blade, but with unknown effects. With that, he decides he'll find out the weapon's powers by using it in combat. Suddenly, a strong tremor shakes the place, and the boss's body starts to tremble violently. Our protagonist is startled by the noise, but John tells him to stay calm. She explains that the tremor accompanies the subjugation and the passage is moving, and so the passage opens a path to the next area, which is the escape route. The scene changes, and we see the border between the Iwatani and Kawabe wards in the city. Our protagonist climbs out of a manhole and realizes he's right on the area's border. He thinks that despite everything, he managed to get this far, but a voice calls out to him. A man asks what he's doing there, and the guy turns around, startled by the situation. Without a second thought, he pushes Jan back into the manhole and tells her to hide. From there, he turns to face the group of men approaching him. One of the hunters scolds him, saying not to wander alone during an emergency. Our protagonist recognizes the uniforms of the Hunter Association's rescue squad. At that, one of the group's leaders tells the others to clear a path for them to pass. The man then looks at him and asks if he's the S-rank hunter Ninomiya. With a smile, the guy shows the young man's profile and says his reputation has already spread. He explains that the rumor of our protagonist defeating an area boss all by himself has already gotten around. The guy remembers the battle against the dragon and admits he made a pretty big scene. And so, the man invites him to join their squad and work together. To convince him, the guy says he can use his authority to register him as a hunter. Our protagonist is speechless because this is the recruitment he's always dreamed of. Faced with the offer, our protagonist clenches his fist tightly as he needs to make a decision. To everyone's surprise, he bows and says he completely refuses the man's offer. The squad leader is in shock and asks if he's going to continue acting as an independent hunter. Without saying another word, the guy remains bowed as a sign of respect and gratitude for the chance. With that, the man understands he has his reasons and that it was a good opportunity to gain fighting power. And so the leader says that if he wants to act alone, that's fine, but to be careful on the way. He then warns him because he heard that illegal hunters are committing crimes in the Iwatani ward. Our protagonist remembers the thugs he encountered and gets worried by the way the man spoke. He thinks that if the association is warning about them, they must be more dangerous, and he needs to stay alert. From there, he helps John out of the manhole and says it's all good now. The elf asks if he's sure about not joining them while the guy pulls Mimi out of the hole. He confirms it, saying he doesn't need the registration anymore because with the world turning into a dungeon, it doesn't matter. Besides, he thinks he can't trust anyone else, not even the Hunter Association. With a smile on his face, he reveals that he actually already has his own teammates. Looking at his allies, he adds that they are the most reliable companions he could ask for. At that, John and Mimi give a happy smile for their new master. Now in the Iwatani ward, our protagonist decides he's going to start with a trap scan. With that, he places his hand on the ground to confirm the area's characteristics and find the best path. The scan shows a map of the location, and he wonders what the heck is in this area. Suddenly, a giant purple spot appears on the screen, making the guy very suspicious. Our protagonist is in shock because he's never seen anything like that in his scans before. From there, he realizes that this could be something very dangerous up ahead. Following the location, they arrive at the outskirts of the Iwatani War. The place his scan showed is an amusement park, and the mysterious he thinks that's at that, but the dangerous mark bothers him a lot, and he decides to investigate the place just in case. As he's walking, little Mimi starts to behave in a very strange way. Our protagonist stops walking because he senses something is very wrong around there. Suddenly, a giant concrete box falls from the sky right in front of them out of nowhere. Our protagonist wonders if the concrete box is that mysterious mark he saw. At that, he approaches a metal plaque that's right next to the object. The plaque says, "Here sleeps the destroyer that crushes any rock. No one should touch." He's confused about what a destroyer is and wonders if it's a large mechanism. John warns him, saying the device could be a catastrophe-class trap. She explains that it's a large-scale danger, very different from normal ones, and very rare. He thinks he's never heard of that, not even in the Hunter Association's records. At that, the guy gets a bad feeling about accidentally activating the trap, and so he decides that as curious as he is, it's better for them to get out of there. The group then leaves the park behind and enters a forest to continue on their way. Our protagonist thinks this is the best shortcut, but it's still a risky bet. Suddenly, he stops walking because he hears something strange coming from up ahead. He sees a group of hunters fighting a monster, and one of them yells not to fall back. The guy notices that despite being strong, the hunters don't seem to have much experience. With a powerful blow, the creature hits the hunters, who go flying with no chance. Looking at the scene, our protagonist realizes that if he doesn't help, it's only a matter of time before everyone there is wiped out. Without a second thought, the guy runs toward the battle to try and save the group of hunters. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks because something completely unexpected has just happened. A flash of golden light appears out of nowhere and hits the creature with absurd speed. A moment later, a mysterious female hunter appears in the air and attacks the monster with her sword. With a single powerful blow, the warrior strikes the ground and creates a huge shockwave. Tsukasa is completely speechless because he didn't expect someone else to interfere in the fight. From there, John and Mimi approach, and the elf asks with concern if her master is okay. Before them, the giant creature that was attacking the hunters was completely defeated in one go. Our protagonist is still in shock from the situation because he doesn't understand what just happened. The mysterious female hunter then lands gracefully on the ground after her devastating attack. The other hunters are dumbfounded because the monster was defeated in the blink of an eye. The warrior turns to them and apologizes for suddenly intruding on their battle. With a smile, she introduces herself as Asahina Yui, an S-rank hunter from the association. The young woman explains she was on a mission to investigate the area boss and ended up finding them, hiding. Our protagonist is impressed by the woman's power and thinks her blow was incredible. From there, Yui says she was looking for companions and invites them to join her. The group of hunters is interested in the offer, but she says there's a small condition. With a serious look, the warrior warns that the mission doesn't end with finding the boss, and a fight is certain. Hearing the warning, the hunters give a slight smile and don't seem to mind the danger. The group's leader agrees on the spot and says they're A-rank hunters and can handle it. Excited about the new partnership, they celebrate and get ready to go after the big boss. With a gentle smile, Asahina Yui tells everyone to go and seems happy to have new allies. But in her thoughts, she calls them naive because she knows they won't last in the fight. John then asks what they should do, and our protagonist says not to get involved. With a determined look, he decides to ignore the group and focus on crossing the forest. After a while, they reach a river, and the guy is surprised by the size of the area. Even though the path is long, he says they just need to keep moving forward to reach their destination. Suddenly, Tsukasa stops walking and is confused because he noticed something strange in the area. With a hand on his head, he complains that ever since he entered this area, only bizarre things have happened. And so he yells, annoyed, for whoever is hiding there to come out at once. Faced with silence, our protagonist decides he's going to force the intruder to show themselves. With that, a purple aura appears in his hand, and he gets ready to use his trap creation. With a powerful shout, he threatens to use his power if the intruder keeps hiding. Suddenly, a terrified man comes out from behind the rocks, begging not to be taken out. The guy says in desperation that he's just an ordinary civilian who was passing by. Next, he kneels on the ground and begs not to become monster food. Our protagonist is confused by what he said and wonders what he's talking about. A moment later, Mimi appears out of nowhere and scares the poor man even more. From there, he understands that with his strange companions, it's normal for the guy to be scared. With that, Tsukasa apologizes for the misunderstanding and says he's an independent hunter. The man is shocked by the revelation and asks if he's really a hunter. Upon confirmation, the guy clings to his leg and desperately begs for help. He explains that he got lost and asks our protagonist to take him to a safe place. Our hero thinks that's a problem because he's in a big hurry right now. Despite the rush, he thinks that monsters appear here, and it would be bad to just abandon the guy. With that, he remembers the group of hunters and thinks about asking them to protect the man. He then says with a smile that he'll find an association squad to protect him. The man celebrates desperately because he's saved and will finally be able to go home safely. Suddenly, Mimi scares him once again, and the guy screams in pure panic at the creature. Tsukasa scolds his ally and apologizes to the man for the little monster's behavior. But he thinks that walking around with monsters like these is dangerous and attracts the association's attention, and so he asks Jean to wait there with Mimi because he's enough to guide him alone. The elf agrees with the order, and our protagonist asks the man to follow him. The two then start walking toward the forest to find the hunter squad. The man comments that it's a relief to have found a hunter and that he's safe now. But our protagonist warns him not to let his guard down because a monster could attack at any moment. Hearing the warning, the man gives a wicked smile and gets ready to do something. With a psycho look, he says the hunter is naive and that it's not just monsters he should fear. Suddenly, he attacks our hero from behind with a yellow energy in his hand to take him down. But our protagonist was already prepared and creates a trap to defend against the surprise attack. The thug is shocked because he didn't expect the guy to react so quickly. The counterattack trap hits the attacker's face dead on, with a powerful punch. With the impact, the man goes flying, and our hero says he was expecting that the whole time. He adds that he had already been warned about the illegal and malicious hunters in this area. Lying on the ground, the man gives a wicked smile and confirms he's one of the thug hunters. Even so, he doesn't give up and gets up to show one of his special abilities. With a victorious smile, he reveals a blue sword and asks if our hero noticed he stole it. Our protagonist is in shock because he recognizes that weapon from somewhere. He remembers that it's the mystic light blade he got from the boss in the other area. The thief then mocks the guy and says he was very careless for letting that happen. He explains that he used his skill right when he was hit to take the opponent's rarest item. His ability is called Rarity Steel and is used to take the enemy's strongest equipment. With a wicked smile, the thug boasts that this is his great special ability. From there, he charges with everything and shouts that with an OP skill like that, he's simply invincible. But suddenly, a blue magic circle appears under him and traps him with sharp vines. The thug is surprised and doesn't understand how the heck a trap just appeared out of nowhere. With that, the vines bind him tightly and lift him into the air, leaving him completely immobilized. That's the binding vine trap, which captures forest trespassers without mercy. Our protagonist then says he didn't do anything, and that it was just a danger that was already there. With a slight smile, he reveals that he threw him on purpose near the containment trap. He explains that with his scan, he can see the location of dangers in advance. With the sword in hand, he warns that the thug isn't the only one with OP abilities around here. And so, he asks what he should do now, since he hasn't used the item he got back yet. With the blade at the man's neck, he prepares to end the fight once and for all. Our protagonist then invites him to be his guinea pig to test the new weapon's power. In a total panic, the attacker begs not to be taken out and says he'll tell a big secret. He reveals that he knows the location of the hidden and ultra-rare item in this specific area. Our hero is surprised by the information and wonders if it's really true. With a suspicious look, he questions how the heck the man knows something like that. The man yells that it's true, and he knows where the hidden item is and asks to be let go. With a suspicious look, our protagonist asks if he really knows the location. Tsukasa thinks that he used the scan as soon as he entered but didn't find any likely spots. He reflects that if the item were in a place with a lot of traps, it would be much easier. Normally, rare items are protected by many dangers, and his skill is perfect for that. However, sometimes they're in remote places, and in that case his power doesn't help much. At that, he deduces that this time, the treasure is in one of those undetectable areas. Suddenly, John appears and asks with concern if her master is okay, and he calls her over. The elf explains she heard the sounds of battle and ran with Mimi to help in the fight. Our protagonist is happy with their concern and apologizes for the scare. He then explains to the elf that this guy is an illegal hunter he just captured. With that, John understands the situation and asks her master to leave the final blow to her. From there, the warrior readies her sword with a threatening look at the thug. The man's eye widens in pure terror as he realizes his end is near. Desperate, he yells for the elf to wait and asks them to listen because he has something to say. Desperate, the man yells that he saw a clue to the hidden item and that he's not lying. At that, our protagonist and John stare at the thug with a very suspicious look. To save himself, he starts to explain that he was looking for a hunter to ambush. The thug explains that for that, he walked deep into an isolated canyon. Suddenly, the cliff in front of him started to shake and move strangely. From there, a giant stone monster with red eyes appeared right in front of him. Impatient, Tsukasa asks what the heck that has to do with the hidden item. The man gets annoyed and calls him stupid, saying the answer to that is pretty obvious. He yells that a monster that's strong and tough must surely be guarding the treasure. Our protagonist finds the idea a bit too simplistic, but thinks it might be possible. With that, Jan warns her master that it's dangerous to believe the guy, but not impossible. She explains that to trick hunters, sometimes items are in simple places. Because of what John said, our hero decides that maybe it's worth believing him. Reluctantly, he draws his magic blade and prepares to go to that location. He announces that they're going to get the item because there's a chance it could help find Shiori. Our protagonist tells the thug to guide them to the stone monster without removing the vines. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he notices a strange glow in the middle of the forest. A moment later, the guy goes on alert at the sound of a blade cutting through the air. The golden glow approaches them at high speed, indicating a powerful attack. He turns around in shock because he didn't expect someone to just appear out of nowhere. The mysterious female hunter cuts the vines, and our protagonist jumps back to protect himself. With the blow, the trap is undone, and the thug finally manages to break free from the vines. John and Mimi run over worriedly, but Tsukasa says he's fine. The warrior then yells for him to stop because he's gone too far with his evil deeds. She says she heard about illegal hunters and is sure he's one of them. Our protagonist is shocked to realize she's the S-rank hunter who was looking for the boss. Meanwhile, John notices that the other hunters from her group have also appeared. The men surround the elf and little Mimi, preparing to attack them both at any moment. One of them yells that he's going to defeat the despicable illegal hunter and wipe them out. And so, he charges and attacks the little monster along with the other monsters in the area. Our protagonist yells for Jan to be careful because those guys have gotten it all wrong. The female hunter attacks, and the guy creates a shield trap to defend against the blow. The abrupt shield is a weak wooden trap that appears out of nowhere to block attacks. With difficulty, he manages to hold back the hunter's strength and grinds his teeth in pain. Jan shouts, worried about her master, but the hunter is unfazed by the scene. The young woman says the fact that he commands evil creatures is proof that he's evil. He yells for her not to jump to conclusions because she's fighting the wrong person. Meanwhile, the thug celebrates his luck and decides it's time to get out of there. John then asks if her master wants her to annihilate all those hunters. The female hunter is shocked and speechless at what the elf just said to them. At that, our protagonist forbids her and tells her to grab Mimi and get out of there now. Jan understands the order and says she will retreat from the location immediately to protect them. And so, she dodges the hunter's attacks with surprising agility. The men are in shock at her speed and yell that they can't catch her. The female hunter watches the scene with a serious and focused look on what to do next. With a sword strike, the hunter breaks the shield and prepares for the next attack. The other hunters watch from a distance as she charges toward our protagonist. The young woman then yells not to worry about the monsters and to surround the evil leader. Tsukasa faces the hunter with a serious look and doesn't seem intimidated by the situation. She praises him for letting his companions escape and staying behind to fight. From there, the warrior says it's now 4 against 1, and he has nowhere to run. Our protagonist tells her not to be mistaken because he didn't stay behind out of desperation. The female hunter is confused and doesn't understand what the heck he's trying to say. With a confident smile, he says that 1 against many is perfect for testing his new weapon. With a swift movement, the guy prepares to use the mystic light blade in battle. He then yells for the sword to dance wildly toward the unknown trap. The screen reveals that the weapon is a rare item with an invisible power and unknown effects. With a determined look, he thinks that the power of that weapon is still completely unknown, and so he says that now is the time to determine its true worth in combat. The other hunters mock him and ask what he can do with such a short sword. Their leader yells not to underestimate A-rank hunters and charges with everything. The female hunter then shouts for them to wait because attacking recklessly is dangerous. Unfazed, our protagonist activates his trap creation with a purple aura. From there, magic circles appear on the hunter's weapons, leaving them in shock. With a smile, he says this will be a test cut and gets ready to attack. And so, the guy charges and yells for his mystic light blade to dance with all its might. The pinball panic trap makes the weapons ricochet and hit their own owners. The female hunter is shocked because he creates traps out of thin air and is no ordinary person. With the impact of the blow, one of the hunters screams in pain from the unexpected attack. Lying on the ground, the others complain that their bodies are tingling from the hit. One of them then looks at his own arm and realizes something is very wrong. In a panic, the guy yells that it's poison and that he's been hit by a poison attack. Our protagonist's blade glows with a purple aura, revealing its true power. He then understands that the weapon's power is to inflict negative status effects on those it cuts. But since it's an ultra-rare item, he believes the effect can't be just that. Suddenly, Tsukasa goes on alert as the female hunter charges at him with everything she's got. The warrior attacks with her golden sword, and our protagonist defends with his blade. She yells that his spree ends here and that he won't hurt anyone else on her watch. With a precise blow, the young woman deflects the short sword he threw in her direction. Our protagonist is surprised because his weapon was easily thrown away. Without wasting time, he activates his trap creation for a new attack plan. With that, the blade starts to move strangely, controlled by magic strings. The weapon glows with an intense blue aura and prepares for its next move. The puppet move trap makes the weapon hit her in the back by surprise. She despairs because she missed the attack and realizes she's been hit by poison. However, this time it's not poison, but an ice attack that freezes her shoulder. With a smile, Tsukasa understands that the blade's color changes the attack's effect. The dagger can freely change attack attributes like poison or freeze. The female hunter prepares to continue the fight despite the negative effects. She yells that the freeze won't stop her and that she's going to use a serious technique. The female hunter closes her eyes and concentrates to prepare her next big attack. With her hands on her sword, she releases a powerful golden aura for her technique. And so, the warrior uses her secret sword, the slashing aura dance, with everything. Our protagonist is shocked by the energy and realizes he can't dodge everything. With no choice, he tries to block the attacks with his blade, but the force is too much. With the impact of the blow, his weapon goes flying with no chance of holding on. From there, the warrior charges with everything to finish the fight once and for all. Unarmed, our hero watches his blade fly and realizes he's in trouble. With a swift movement, the female hunter manages to catch his weapon in the air with ease. With a victorious smile, she says she's caught the evil sword and that it's hers now. The young woman then warns that he's unarmed and at a disadvantage, telling him to surrender. Suddenly, the warrior is in shock as a white smoke surrounds her out of nowhere. The sword in her hand turns into a branch, and she realizes she was tricked by a fake item. Her eyes widen in pure shock as she fell right into his trap. A moment later, our protagonist appears behind her with the real weapon, ready to attack. With a precise blow, he hits the hunter's back, who screams in pain from the attack. He then apologizes and reveals that the real sword was in his hand the whole time. Our protagonist says the opening to create the trap was when she closed her eyes. The warrior doesn't give up and yells that as an S-rank hunter, the fight isn't over yet. Suddenly, the blade's effect hits her, and she falls to her knees on the ground, completely drained of strength. He tells her not to push herself because she can't even stand up straight anymore. Tsukasa reveals that the attack inflicts paralysis and makes any movement impossible. And so, he tells her and the others that he won't hurt them anymore, and to rest. The female hunter is confused and asks why he's showing them so much mercy. He says he has no intention of finishing them and just wanted to end the pointless battle. With a serious look, our protagonist says he won't do anything else, and that she can relax. From there, he approaches her and asks her to believe that he's not an illegal hunter. She agrees and says the fact that he's not finishing them is the biggest proof that he's not evil. The warrior then tries to apologize for the misunderstanding, but a strange noise interrupts them. The two go on alert and wonder what the heck that sound that came out of nowhere is. The sound was actually the ground shaking with the arrival of a gigantic creature. At that, the stone monster the thug mentioned appears and faces the two. Our protagonist is in shock at the creature's size and wonders what it is. The female hunter then warns that this is, without a doubt, the true boss of the area. With that, she shows her high-performance sensor, which confirms the monster's identity. In the distance, the thug who escaped also realizes that this is the area's boss. Our protagonist turns and sees the illegal hunter who had run away earlier, running. The stone creature then turns its head in the man's direction as if it were following him. Without wasting time, the monster attacks with its stone fist, destroying everything in its path. With the force of the impact, the illegal hunter is sent flying and screams in pain. Lying on the ground, he begs for help in complete despair at the dangerous situation. Suddenly, a purple light appears in front of him, and he's startled by the figure that appears. With a serious look on his face, our protagonist faces the man, who is paralyzed with fear. With the blade at his neck, Tsukasa asks if he was the one who brought the monster here. The man gives a wicked smile and says he had already told him about the incredible monster in the canyon. And so, he explains that he woke the creature up and let it loose on the hunters. He continues the explanation, saying that if he had just run, he would have been chased anyway. At that, the man reveals that he thought about using the monster to buy time and escape. However, his calculations were wrong, and he ended up being the only one chased by the creature. Our protagonist is annoyed that he did all that even knowing it was the boss. Suddenly, he spins around on alert because the giant creature is about to attack again. The stone monster raises its fist and prepares to crush them both with everything. With a powerful blow, the creature hits the ground, and our protagonist dodges by a hair. The female hunter then yells for everyone to fall back because they can't fight in this state. One of the hunters panics and screams in desperation at the dangerous situation. The warrior realizes that the darn monster is aiming for them now. Without wasting time, Tsukasa activates his trap creation to get the beast's attention. With a magic circle, he prepares to use one of his attacks and provoke the monster. He then yells for the rockhead to come at him because his opponent is him. The female hunter is confused by the guy's attitude and wonders what he's doing. With a furious look, the stone monster faces our protagonist and follows him closely. And so, he yells for the creature to follow him because his plan is just beginning. He thinks he needs to lead the monster to a place that's easier to fight in and away from the others. From there, the guy runs, and the boss follows, destroying everything in its path. Meanwhile, John and Mimi are at a river, and the elf senses that something is wrong. She tells Mimi not to let its guard down because there might be enemies nearby. The warrior then approaches the riverbank and tries to understand the situation. Suddenly, she hears the sound of crumbling rocks and goes on full alert. A strong tremor shakes the place, and the two get ready for whatever is coming. Before them, the stone monster appears, and our protagonist is right on top of the beast. John is in shock at the scene, and Mimi is startled by the sudden appearance. Our hero shouts his ally's name, surprised to find her right there. He then warns the two to get ready for battle because the fight is about to start. With a determined look, our protagonist charges with everything at the monster. He yells that they're going to defeat this area boss once and for all. The guy says that combat is inevitable because the monster seems to have him as its main target. With a worried look, Tsukasa reflects that they need to break that rigid body somehow. Suddenly, a golden flash emerges behind them and catches our protagonist's attention. The female hunter uses her slashing aura dance and charges at the stone monster with everything. The blow hits the creature dead on, but to everyone's surprise, it doesn't leave a single scratch. With a graceful step, the warrior lands on the ground next to our protagonist. She says they caught up and invites him to battle alongside them against the boss. Our protagonist gives a slight smile because he didn't expect them to return. The female hunter explains that because of him, they had time to recover and are fine now. Our hero is confused and asks how the heck she knows his name all of a sudden. She shows his file and says the rumors that he wiped out a boss alone have spread. The warrior then introduces herself as Asahina Tsumugi, an S-rank hunter from the association. One of the hunters interrupts her and screams in desperation about the area boss situation. He warns that the monster's defense is too tough and nothing seems to inflict damage on it. The hunter adds that not even her technique managed to scratch the beast. Tsumugi asks if he has any tactics to defeat this formidable enemy. She believes that someone as excellent as him should be able to come up with a plan quickly. The warrior then begs him to lend his wisdom and that they will risk their lives. Our protagonist is in shock because she barely knows him and is already placing so much trust in him. He questions if she's an extremely naive do-gooder or if there's something more to it. Even so, he thinks that at least now he has extra combat power for the battle. Suddenly, he remembers the concrete box he saw and has a new idea. With a serious look, he asks if they're really willing to fight as he commands. The female hunter gives a slight smile and seems to agree with our hero's suggestion. The other hunters say there's nothing they can do since she's the one who decided, and they'll go all out. And so the whole group moves toward the stone monster to start the plan. Together, they will prepare a trap to shatter that enemy into pieces. With the team assembled, he shouts that the operation has started and tells everyone to get ready for the stone monster's attack. He then turns to the elf and says she needs to move on her own and go back the way they came. Just then, one of the gray-haired hunters screams in terror that the creature is coming right at them. The stone creature raises its gigantic fist, getting ready to smash everyone in its path. With that, the creature's fist comes down with full force, but the young man activates his trap creation. A blue energy barrier then springs up from the ground, protecting the boy and the rank hunter from the impact of the strike. The young warrior is shocked by the situation and wonders what just happened. It was a defense trap, a shock-proof shelter as strong as a shell that blocks any attack. The other hunters are impressed with the young man's ability and how incredible it truly is. Meanwhile, the elf runs at high speed away from the battle to carry out her part of the plan. One of the guys then asks where the armored warrior went, but the young man explains it's all part of the strategy. With a smile, he says he sent the elf ahead and they'll follow right behind while luring the boss. With that, their destination is the amusement park in that area as they draw the monster there. The S-rank hunter then approaches and asks why they're leading the creature to the park. The young man replies with a serious look that it's because there's a trap there that can take down that enemy. The boy then wonders to himself if the catastrophe trap will be the key to winning the battle. The stone creature attacks again, and the hunters have to spread out to avoid being hit. The protagonist shouts that there's no time for explanations and tells everyone to fall back and deal damage little by little. With that, the guys understand they'll use feet attacks to distract the enemy and agree to help. And so, the stone creature is bombarded by several energy attacks as the group carries out the plan. The hunters go all out, using an electric axe and a thunder spear to harm the stone creature. But the stone monster doesn't seem to feel a thing and stares at the hunters with its glowing red eyes. Then, another hunter uses a fire sword to try and deal some damage to the creature. However, the giant monster manages to dodge the strike and counters with a powerful attack. Desperate, the hunter realizes the enemy's attack reached him first, and that he's about to be crushed. But our hero activates his trap creation and makes a giant magnet that forces targets to move. Just then, the young man is pulled by the giant magnet, escaping the monster's fist by a split second. The creature then smashes the ground where he was, and the hunter shouts in surprise at being suddenly saved. Our protagonist then shouts for them not to worry about dodging, as he will protect them with his abilities. Seeing the scene, The S-rank hunter understands that he's using traps to help everyone evade. With that, she plants her feet firmly on the ground and gets ready to show off all her power as an S-rank hunter. With a fiery aura around her, the warrior says she'll also give it her all in the battle ahead. The young woman then readies her secret sword to unleash a powerful strike against the stone creature. With a shout, she uses her explosive strike and launches a full force blast of fire at the monster. The fire attack hits the stone monster head on, which seemed to have no chance to defend itself. To everyone's surprise, the hunter's strike manages to crack the creature's arm, dealing real damage. With its arm injured, the stone monster roars in fury and prepares a counter attack with everything it's got. The creature then tears off a piece of its own arm, and our hero shouts that they're taking off. He then uses his trap creation and makes a drone that suddenly appears to whisk people away. With that, the young man grabs onto the rescue drone to escape the monster's attack and continue the plan. With that, the rescue drone soars into the sky, pulling him and the S-rank hunter out of the blast just in time. With a smile, he says they'll keep luring the area boss that way until they reach the planned location. The young man thinks everything will work out as long as the elf managed to activate that thing in time. Meanwhile, the elf warrior reaches her destination and lands on the ground with an aura of determination. The warrior then confirms she's reached the target and prepares for the next phase of the group's strategy. With her sword in hand, she shouts for the mighty destroyer to finally reveal itself for battle. The elf then strikes the pedestal with her sword to activate the large mechanism that was sealed there. With the strike, the large concrete box begins to crack, and a very intense golden light shines from within it. Back at the battle, one of the hunters runs desperately as the stone creature chases him. Out of breath, the young man complains that his stamina is running out, and he won't last much longer. The creature then tries to smash another hunter, but two purple portals appear to save him at the last second. The young man is teleported by the spatial distortion, which unexpectedly transports him to another location. The young warrior helps the rescued hunter and celebrates that the rescue was a success and everyone is safe. The protagonist says they're almost out of the forest and that everyone has done a great job so far. He then turns to his little monster and says he'll leave the rest to it, telling it to run to the park. The little chest then uses a smoke candle that attracts monsters to get the stone creature's attention. With that, the stone monster starts chasing the little chest, which runs at high speed away from the group. In the air, the protagonist spots the amusement park and realizes they're almost at their final destination. The stone creature follows them to the park, and the young man shouts for it to keep coming in that direction. The scene then shifts to the elf, who is on top of a golden structure, waiting for the monster with a smile. The elf warrior stands before the large concrete box, which is now cracked and glowing. The scene then changes to the amusement park, where an ice cream truck is playing loud music. Just then, the stone monster lands forcefully on the park ground, breaking everything with the impact. The giant creature arrives right where the little chest was luring it with the special smoke. With the force of the landing, the little monster is thrown far away with no chance to defend itself. The unknown calamity trap is a giant bell, and the little chest wonders what will happen if it's activated. Suddenly, gigantic chains shoot out from the bell's mechanism at an absurd speed. The chains then wrap around the stone monster's body, completely trapping it in place. With its whole body tied up, the stone creature is completely immobilized, unable to move. The monster then becomes furious with the situation, its eyes glowing with a red aura of rage. With a red energy, the creature tries to break free from the chains with all its might. Seeing the danger, the elf warrior runs at high speed to save the little chest that was on the ground. With a smile, our hero says she did a good job, and that he's leaving the little monster in her hands. The young man thinks that to capture an area boss, he needs to weaken the creature even more. So, he prepares a rain of fire to set everything ablaze with a sphere of purple energy. The attack, called Fiend's Flame, hits the monster with flames that are meant to completely consume all intruders. The elf warrior uses her sword to shield herself from the flames, while holding the little monster in her arms. The stone creature is hit head on by the flames but opens its mouth and seems to be feeding on the fire. Even with the fire attack, the stone creature seems to be fine and hasn't taken much damage. The young man then reflects that it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it can be considered a trap. He says that the trap will become a weapon for him, the master of traps. With that, the giant bell smashes the stone creature with absurd force. Fallen on the ground, the stone monster groans in pain from the devastating impact of the blow. Just then, a large red explosion occurs, and our hero watches everything from above. The other hunters arrive, and the young warrior asks in shock what just happened. The young man then lands with his drone and faces the group, who watch him with admiration. He explains that the monster was taken down by the trap, and that the area is now safe. With that, everyone celebrates the defeat of the area boss with shouts of joy. The S-rank hunter is surprised and thoughtful about the situation she just witnessed. The battle site is now full of items, and the warrior wonders what they are. She picks up an item and deduces that they scattered when the monster's body broke apart. The other guys realize they can take as many items as they want and get very excited. Meanwhile, the little chest monster eats some of the items with a happy sound. The protagonist then notices a shiny object on the ground and wonders what it could be. He picks up the object and realizes it looks like a bracelet with a very intense glow. With that, a blue light emanates from the bracelet as he holds it with a surprised look. The screen reveals it's the bracelet of celestial perception, used to see the status of others. The young man is shocked and wonders if he can really see the status of other hunters. He remembers that this is impossible, as normal equipment can only measure one's own status. With a determined look, he faces the other hunters, ready to test his new power. He wonders if he should try, and with that, he puts the new bracelet on his wrist to test it. A blue energy aura then surrounds him, and he activates the bracelet's power with a determined look. The analysis reveals that the S-rank hunter has high stats, but her mana is surprisingly low. He understands that she hides this weakness with her swordsmanship and combat techniques. The young man realizes that exposing an opponent's weakness is like a cheat, and this goes beyond a normal item. He turns to his elf companion and asks if that's an ultra-rare hidden item, and she confirms. The warrior explains that the item was hidden inside the body of the very area boss they defeated. Just then, he remembers the illegal hunter saying there was a treasure near the stone monster. The young man concludes that the criminal's speculation wasn't entirely wrong, and he was kind of right. Suddenly, the S-rank hunter's communicator starts beeping, and she looks at the device on her wrist. She then tells everyone they're receiving a transmission, and that it must be a message from headquarters. The young woman says the interference vanished after the boss's defeat, and that there might be new information. A holographic screen appears, and a man announces that this is a declaration from the independent state of Afterbreak. The man then declares with a furious look that they have taken down all the units the association sent. He shouts that their victory is absolute, and that all the hunters were wiped out in the battle. The man then warns in a threatening tone that any interference will result in more losses for their side. The warrior realizes the transmission isn't from headquarters, but a signal hijack from the rebels of the West District. The young man remembers that the West District is the independent state he saw on the communications system. With a serious look, he wonders if they are the ones behind that suspicious transmission he saw earlier. He then despairs, as the battle has already begun, and his sister Nana is right in the middle of that chaos. On the screen, the rebel leader shouts that any invader will be taken down without mercy, as that's the law of their independent nation. With that, the other hunters are in complete shock, wondering what kind of crazy broadcast that is. The blonde warrior looks startled at the holographic display and says she has no idea what's going on either. She then explains this means the squad sent to investigate the area was completely wiped out, and things are looking grim. At that moment, the woman turns to ask for our hero's opinion on the matter, but notices that he has simply vanished. The other guys in the group are also confused, reporting that his monster allies disappeared with him without a trace. But the huntress just gives a slight smile and thinks to herself how that young man is truly full of surprises. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to the border of the West District, where the river runs through the forest, and the boy is running non-stop. His steps kick up water as the young man rushes forward at high speed, trying to reach his destination as soon as possible. He runs alongside the elf warrior and the small chest, setting the pace and stating that they have no time to waste standing around. With a determined look, the protagonist thinks that he needs to get to the West District and rescue his sister before this mess gets any worse. Soon, the trio arrives at the edge of a cliff where they can see the vast modern metropolis right below them. Looking at the city, the boy figures she must be hiding somewhere among those towering buildings. But then he asks his two companions to wait a moment, because he needs to take care of a little problem with them first. The young man thinks to himself that it would be impossible to enter the city without drawing attention while walking with two eye-catching creatures. To solve this, the boy places his hands on the ground and shouts, activating his trap creation magic at full power. At that, the ground begins to shake, and a giant, rectangular object emerges from the earth, emanating a powerful purple energy. Faced with the scene, the elf warrior and the small chest watch everything with wide eyes, completely confused by the situation. The generated trap is a phantom coffin that serves as a perfect vessel to seal monsters inside. At that moment, the lid of the enormous coffin begins to open slowly, revealing a dark interior ready to be used. At that moment, the young man asks if the two of them can stay inside that special container to be transported. He then explains that this item is used to store his allies and summon them whenever he needs them. Even though it's a bit of a tight space, the elf accepts the request and says she doesn't mind the discomfort. Staring at her master, the warrior states with a smile that she will follow him anywhere. At that, the small chest lets out a funny sound and seems very excited to enter the new hiding spot. So, the duo enters the magic coffin and asks to be called on as soon as the boy needs help. Quickly, the lid closes, and the two are stored safely inside the transport device. Right after, the object disappears into the ground, and the protagonist is left alone to continue his journey. Observing the area, he thinks that everything went according to plan, and now it's time to move on to the next objective. Heading toward the center of the West Sector, the boy hopes to find his missing sister quickly. Upon arriving in the district, he sees widespread destruction and realizes that things there are a real mess. At that instant, the hero finds a defeated search team and understands that the danger is real. With a worried look, he notices that the association's team has been completely defeated by the enemies. Suddenly, a robotic monster emerges from the ruins and senses the boy's presence. At that moment, the metallic creature is holding a fallen hunter while wielding a sharp blade. Seeing that scene, the protagonist understands that the dungeon hasn't been cleared yet. With that, he discovers that the area boss is still alive and wreaking havoc. At that, the giant robot starts charging toward the young man to try to crush him with all its might. Gaining speed, the enemy closes in quickly, ready for a devastating attack. Without wasting time, the trapmaster prepares a magic circle to teach his opponent a lesson. The young man is startled to see a silhouette on top of the building and quickly prepares a defensive skill. At that, the hooded figure tells him not to attack recklessly, as that monster is part of the local defenses. But the protagonist is confused by this revelation and wonders what this stranger really means. He then demands to know the intruder's identity as he watches the man descend quickly to the ground. The stranger tells the boy to be quiet and follow him, explaining that the explanations can wait. With that, the hooded figure reveals that he was under specific orders to let only our hero pass. We then see that the place looks surprisingly organized, even with people serving fresh fruit on golden platters. He walks right behind the guide, passing by a giant creature guarding the entrance to that specific sector. But the boy is shocked to see various monsters roaming freely through the streets as if it were normal. He thinks that the beasts are either dominating the humans or living in a very bizarre and unsettling harmony. At that instant, a mysterious voice speaks up, correcting his thought and calling the boy by his full name. Then we see a vast hallway lined with robots, while an imposing figure waits at the far end of the room. He asks who the person is and how that stranger managed to discover his true identity so quickly. At that, the man walks forward and claims to be the supreme ruler of this entire independent nation. The figure then approaches and reveals himself to be the true king of this territory as the robotic guards watch. He introduces himself as Dada Jimagen and says he hopes they can get along from now on, but the protagonist recognizes that face from the earlier broadcast and becomes tense when he confirms he is the great leader. At that, the redhead asks him not to look so angrily, saying that even the renegades have heard rumors about the hero. He mentions that the legend of the boy who defeated an area boss all by himself has spread like wildfire. The man then explains that they're former members of the Hunter Association, and they already know his story well. At that, the hooded stranger comments that someone claims to know the protagonist very well, all while giving a wicked smile. With that, the hero is shocked to recognize that familiar voice that tormented him so much in the past. At that moment, the cocky blonde makes a peace sign with his hand and reveals himself to be his old rival, Asanuma. The boy then asks what that guy is doing there, since he thought he'd taken care of him back in the central sector. But the villain explains that things went south after that day because the people from the association caught him stealing items during the chaos. We then see that he was hunted down relentlessly by the security squads and had to run for his life to avoid getting caught. The situation turned into a massive chase across several different areas as the posse tried to capture the thief. Because of that, the fugitive ended up in this isolated place after a long time running from everyone. At that moment, we see a massive man leading a guild of renegades who seem ready for war. The brute then states that the blonde wasn't the only one to turn his back on the rules, and that many there share the same story. But the former bully puts an arm on the hero's shoulder and sarcastically introduces his new partners in crime. The protagonist then eyes the group and asks if his army is just made up of hunter thugs. The leader gives a confident smile and says that the team's power goes far beyond simple armed humans. With that, a robotic creature positions itself behind him and receives the direct order to attack the one standing beside it. At that moment, the metal monster faces its own robotic ally without showing any kind of hesitation or mercy. Then the machine prepares for a devastating blow as the atmosphere grows heavy with tension. The giant scythe is then swung with incredible force to show what that being is truly capable of. But the cut is so fast that the other robot's head is sent flying, leaving the protagonist utterly speechless. The villain then explains that all those monsters move at his command and accept any order without question. With that, the brute reveals that his special ability is called Spectre Control and that he has an unbeatable army. The hero reflects on the monster control ability, realizing that it's very similar to his own trap domination. We then see an imposing man commanding several robotic creatures that seem to obey his every command. But this guy can control any ordinary creature, while our protagonist can only command specific monster types. He then realizes that in terms of versatility, he's at a disadvantage against his new adversary, as his own functions are much more limited. At that moment, a little girl trips near one of the giant robots and freezes in fear at the unexpected situation. The child's mother then runs to protect her and apologizes desperately, fearing the creature will harm her. But the metal giant just tells the girl to be more careful of her surroundings when walking down the street. With that, the army leader explains that those machines are there precisely to protect the powerless citizens. He assures them that with this army, everyone's safety is guaranteed against any invader or outlaw who tries anything. But this man's plan goes far beyond that area, as he intends to expand his rule across the entire planet. With a smile on his face, the villain declares that it all begins here with the rule of his own newly created independent nation. the protagonist is shocked to realize that the guy is serious about uniting the whole world under his personal command. The leader then asks to get back to the main topic, because he still has a few questions for the boy. With that, the stranger offers to give him a tour of the city and show him how things work under his new regime. As they walk through the streets, they see several soldiers in debris, showing that the world outside is a far cry from what it used to be. At that moment, one of the guards approaches to report an urgent problem, and the chief asks what's going on. Meanwhile, the hero notices that the place is a total mess and worries, because he sees no sign of his sister nearby. He senses that things might get ugly and decides he needs to analyze the mysterious man's power level. The young man then activates the power of his new bracelet to read his opponent's secret stats without him noticing. He wonders what kind of overpowered attributes this guy must have, since his goal is to become king of the entire world. Analyzing the parameters, he sees that the leader's numbers are reasonable for an A rank, but not that impressive. With that, the young man wonders how someone with those stats can command so many monsters at once. At that moment, the red-haired man approaches to talk about what really matters to the boy. He then offers him a place in his new independent nation and invites the hero to help build this world. But the protagonist just stares at the villain with a serious expression, full of doubt about the strange proposal. The young man then responds directly that he refuses the invitation and has no intention of joining the criminal group. At that instant, he states that the world the man is trying to create is nothing but a living hell for people. The leader then regrets the answer, reminding him that he'd only make the invitation once before taking action. With that, the enemy extends his hand and activates a powerful ability that makes red chains appear out of nowhere. Trapped by the chains, the boy tries to react, but realizes the item is much stronger than he imagined. At that moment, the hero notices that the magical object is meant to completely seal the use of any ability. The villain comments that it's a waste to eliminate someone so talented, but he won't accept anyone who opposes his ideals. The soldiers then approach, as the leader points to the prisoner, who is completely subdued. He shouts for all to hear that the invader will be dealt with in the cruelest way possible for refusing the offer. At that moment, the executioner orders them to take the protagonist to the execution field, and the young man is startled. Walking through the rebel, the group leads the prisoner away while the nation's chief walks ahead with confidence. The boy regrets letting his guard down, not expecting them to have such a rare magic sealing item. He realizes that this Dojima guy seemed to have high expectations for his potential before the refusal. But the hero concludes that the man is just a crazy tyrant for sending someone to their end over so little. At that moment, a gray-haired guy approaches to mock the situation, saying he made a very poor choice. He continues to taunt him, saying the protagonist could have even become a minister if he had accepted. Looking to the side, the young man pretends to agree, saying he really made a huge mistake back there, but he quickly clarifies that his mistake wasn't refusing the alliance with that band of dangerous criminals. The boy then states that his real mistake was getting involved with trash like them in the first place. With that, the protagonist forcefully kicks a soda can that was lying on the ground. The object flies through the air towards a wall where a magic circle is glowing intensely. As soon as the can hits the center of the symbol, a red light explodes and activates a hidden mechanism in the area. One of the guards notices the strange movement and yells in desperation that something terrible is about to appear. At that moment, the magic circle changes color to a bright blue and releases a devastating energy in the area. Then, a gigantic whirlwind of flames erupts to swallow everything and begin the real chaos on the battlefield. Run, the fire is coming, and the hunters flee in desperation from the intense heat. With that, the tracking device ends up being destroyed, while the chains tighten on the hero's arm. At that moment, the young man announces that he'll use the traps on the wall to fight his own way. He had already mapped out every danger in that area before even entering the big city. The iron chains then break with ease, freeing the protagonist from that prison. Now free, the boy decides he needs to find his sister as quickly as possible, but the sound of footsteps behind him puts the young man on high alert. At that, his rival appears and says the trapmaster has finally met his match. The villain lets out a crazy laugh and says a boring execution would have been no fun at all. He guarantees he's not a weakling anymore and shows his gleaming sword to start the duel. With a swift move, the enemy uses his new tornado ability to attack with everything he's got, but the protagonist prepares to counter, attack without showing a hint of fear. The two clash in mid-air as the boy notices that his opponent is much faster. With that, a precise cut hits the blonde's arm, leaving the boy surprised by the blow. But the bully looks at the wound and tells the hero not to get cocky over a simple scratch. The young man then replies that it's far from just an ordinary injury. At that instant, the villain looks at his own hand and starts to feel something strange. He's in shock as he sees his arm turning to stone and can't understand a thing. With half his body petrified, the opponent panics as he realizes he's losing his movement. This is the power of the Mystic Blade, which applies negative effects to anyone it cuts. The bracelet on the hero's wrist glows, revealing that the analysis system is working. The screen shows that the enemy has even leveled up, but is still inferior to the protagonist. With a serious look, the young man declares that the fight is over and his rival has been defeated. Even as a statue, the blonde shouts that the city is full of dangerous enemies. Suddenly, two giant robots with glowing red eyes appear right behind the boy. He looks back and is startled by the size of those combat machines. With that, the hero realizes he made too much noise and attracted the attention of the entire enemy army. Fighting so many opponents now would be a terrible idea and would put him at a complete disadvantage. At that moment, the young man starts running to try and lose the metal guard chasing him. He then uses his trap creation to generate a teleportation portal and escape from there. At that instant, a foot steps through a purple energy portal in the middle of a dark corridor. With that, two giant robots with glowing red eyes are standing by, ready for combat. He looks quite exhausted as he observes his surroundings with a very serious expression. Walking through the sewer tunnels, the young man realizes that this place is the most dangerous spot in the entire region. At that moment, the protagonist notices that there are deadly traps scattered in every corner of this underground structure. The boy understands that normally, anyone would turn back upon encountering so many dangers in their path. But for the hero, this infernal route is exactly what he needs to achieve his goal right now. Before him, an army of monsters in heavy armor with large axes positions itself to attack. So, the fighter decides to bet everything on a risky plan and challenges the dangers of the place to bring it on. With that, the young man decides to see if luck is on his side as electrical energy envelops his entire body. At that, a gloved hand opens a vial of green magic potion that glows brightly in the dark. The restorative liquid is then poured over the head of a man who appears to be petrified. As the potion takes effect, the stone skin begins to crack, revealing the man's eyes underneath. Soon after, several pieces of rock fly in all directions, indicating that the spell has been broken. The now free man falls to his knees on the ground, while other armed warriors watch the scene from behind. A warrior with red hair and an animal skin cape glares at his subordinate with a superior and intimidating look. Trembling with fear, the subordinate apologizes to his master for failing to capture the target who escaped. But the red-haired leader remains calm, stating that he had already planned the next step of this chase. He then asks the reconnaissance unit if they have finally found the fugitive's trail. With that, one of the scouts confirms that the tracking magic worked and located the boy in the underground tunnels. At that moment, the villain wonders why his target would still be hiding in that sewer for so long. His henchman then suggests that the best thing to do is wait at the exit of the passage to set up an ambush. With a wicked smile on his face, the commander finds the idea quite interesting and decides to go with the plan. He states that he will wait for the young man to come out, but first, he will spread numerous deadly traps throughout the area. The leader then vows that all the rebels will perish and that his opponent will regret ever facing their king. Meanwhile, the protagonist walks on the water pooled on the floor of the dark and silent tunnel. He keeps moving forward, even though he is visibly tired from the difficult journey so far. Sweat runs down the hero's face, showing that he is reaching the limit of his physical effort. Suddenly, the young man falters and falls to his knees on the damp ground while trying to catch his breath. Looking at his energy bar, he sees that his stamina and mana are at almost half and dropping fast. After the intense fight in the tunnels, the boy feels exhausted but notices archers surrounding him on top of the bridge. At that, one of the soldiers fires a precise arrow in the hero's direction as he tries to catch his breath. Dodging with difficulty, the young man lets out a heavy sigh, realizing his situation is getting worse and worse. Then, several projectiles fly in his direction, and he is forced to perform evasive maneuvers to avoid being hit. Observing from above, the enemy leader comments that the boy's danger instincts are truly impressive, but that the protagonist remains breathless, facing his opponent while trying to come up with a plan to get out of there alive. The redhead then smiles victoriously, stating that even tired, the boy managed to defeat his subordinates with ease. At that moment, the hero realizes he's fallen into an ambush and wonders how this Dojima guy planned it all. In a mocking tone, the villain says that a condemned man tried to escape his execution, but would not succeed today. Keeping his eyes fixed, the boy listens to the taunts and stays on high alert for any move from the rival group. Showing an electronic device, the villain reveals that he investigated the young man's past to discover his weak points. Happy with the information, he says that Asanoma was the one who revealed all the details about the protagonist's life. With that, a holographic screen displays the image of little Shiori, and the redhead claims that the heavens are on his side now. The impact of that revelation causes the boy's eyes to widen in pure shock as he sees his relative in danger. On the screen, the poor girl is tied to a wooden cross as the tension rises with every second. Confirming the girl's identity, the villain says she lived in the West District and is now his personal prisoner. With a wicked smile, the man confesses that he tracked the young woman in the city and captured her to serve as a hostage. He then threatens to eliminate the little girl right in front of her brother if he continues to act so stubbornly and disobediently. With a cruel look, the redhead orders the hero to remember this scene well so he doesn't make any more mistakes. Consumed by rage, the protagonist complains about the dirty way these guys operate and refuses to accept such cowardice. Shouting with all his might, he says this talk of being king of the world is a joke and that he's not afraid of their empty threats. Offended, the enemy leader calls the boy trash and says he doesn't even have the right to command monsters in his presence. Summoning his powers, the boy activates his trap creation, and an intense purple aura begins to envelop his entire body. With that, a massive object called a phantom coffin appears to seal the creatures that fight alongside our master. Slamming the item on the ground with force, he generates a shockwave and prepares to show his true combat strength. At that instant, the young man summons Jean and Mimi to the battle, demanding that his allies exit the container immediately. As the coffin doors open, a dense smoke spreads through the area, and the hero's subordinates prepare to act. Ready for action, the elf and the small monster get into position to make the villains pay for all their evil deeds. Surprised by the scene, the redhead realizes his opponent also has the power to command beasts and finds the situation interesting. Pointing to the horizon, the man orders the boy to go to the quarry ahead if he wants to see his beloved sister again. At that moment, the red-haired villain shouts, daring the young man to try and save his sister if he really has the courage. With a furious look, the protagonist replies that the enemy doesn't need to repeat the warning because he's already ready for combat. As he runs, the boy has to dodge arrows from the guards watching the bridge, who are trying to stop his advance at all costs. Observing the scene, the executioner lets out a wicked smile and calls the boy a foolish rebel for falling into such an obvious trap. The man then reflects that the girl is just bait and that the hero has no idea of the terrible trap that awaits him just ahead. Running with all his might, the trapmaster ignores his fatigue and focuses only on reaching the place where his relative is being held. At that instant, the boy swears to himself that he will rescue Shiori no matter the cost and will let nothing stand in his way. Suddenly, the scene cuts to a few years ago, showing the young man sitting in front of his computer during a quiet night. Back then, the student was researching everything about becoming a hunter, looking for useful information to change his life. With a tired expression, the boy spent hours studying the system while trying to understand how this world worked. Just then, his little sister enters the room, very excited, and tells him she heard rumors about him awakening an S-rank class. A bit confused by the news, the hero comments that he still doesn't quite understand the details of this new power he received. He explains to the girl that his special function is called Trapmaster, but the name sounds a bit strange to him. In a concerned tone, the young man confesses that he's afraid he won't be able to control such a powerful ability, but the girl runs over to her brother and tells him he can't think so negatively about his own potential. Smiling confidently, the little girl affirms that he will be the most incredible hunter of all and that he will surprise the world. At that moment, she says the boy will become very strong to protect the family and take care of her and their mother with all his love. Returning to the present, the hero remembers those sweet words and feels his determination burn brighter than ever. With firm steps, the young man advances across the battlefield, stating that Shiori can leave everything in his hands from now on. Rushing towards the center of the arena, the boy sees the wooden structure where the girl is tied up and becomes desperate. The protagonist then lands on the ground, kicking up dust as he focuses his eyes on the goal of saving his beloved sister. Looking up, the boy shouts the little girl's name and tries to find a way to climb that bizarre structure. Noticing her brother's presence, the young woman begins to cry with relief and asks if he really came to save her from that place. With a motivating shout, the boy tells her he's getting her out of there right now and asks her to hang on just a little longer. Suddenly, a tremor shakes the entire area, and strange sounds start coming from under the ground in a terrifying way. At that moment, the ground cracks and a dark energy begins to overflow, creating an atmosphere of pure terror. Observing the scene, the girl is paralyzed with fear as she realizes that something gigantic is emerging from the depths. With a deafening roar, an immense, multi-headed hydra emerges from the ground and positions itself as a deadly obstacle. The trapmaster is in shock at the size of the beast and wonders if that monster is the local area boss. Just then, the villain reappears, laughing loudly, and asks if the boy really thought he would hand over the hostage without an epic fight first. The smug blonde claims that his master can make even the area boss surrender without any difficulty. With that, the hero becomes completely apprehensive as he watches the silhouette of a giant beast appearing in the background. At that moment, the villain shouts for the execution to begin and points to the girl who is serving as bait. He sees his sister tied to a wooden cross as a giant red dragon approaches to attack. The boy then tries to activate a protection spell, but realizes the distance is too great to help. The monster opens its immense maw to devour little Shiori as a sense of despair takes over the scene. Seeing the danger up close, the young woman begins to cry and closes her eyes, expecting the worst from that creature's impact. But a direct hit strikes the beast's head, causing the attack to be interrupted unexpectedly. Watching the scene, the blonde celebrates, thinking his elimination plan worked, and feels a wicked sense of pride. Suddenly, the beast starts acting strangely and seems to be choking on something very solid. The system then announces that a fake iron ball was placed in the path to deceive the dragon's senses. With that, the boy appears carrying his sister in his arms as a dense smoke covers their trail. He asks if the girl is hurt and assures her that she is now completely safe under his personal protection. At that moment, the girl asks if her brother came alone to rescue her from that dangerous place. The hero smiles and remembers that he made a solemn promise that he would always be there to save her from any situation. He then states that he'd become the strongest hunter of all, but is suddenly interrupted by something fast. At that instant, several magic chains appear out of nowhere and begin to wrap around the young man's body with great force. The boy realizes that this special item is used to seal his powers, leaving him unable to fight. At that, his rival approaches, laughing, and comments that the protagonist was careless to let his guard down at that moment. With a victorious look, the villain explains that his adversary can no longer use any of his abilities. He gets angry as he realizes he fell into a well-planned trap set by his old enemy. At that moment, Shiori realizes that her capture was just bait used to lure and neutralize her savior. The blonde then gives a sinister smile and states that even though the hero got stronger, he's still knave. Just then, a gigantic multi-headed creature appears behind the villain, demonstrating overwhelming power. Desperate, the young man orders his sister to flee from there immediately so she doesn't get caught in the middle of the deadly chaos. He explains that he already knew it was all a setup, but he swore to save the girl even if it cost him his life. With that, the colossal monster lets out a powerful roar as the pair watches the shadow of doom loom over them. At that instant, the girl refuses to abandon the boy, stating that she won't leave him alone in this situation. Then, an intense light begins to shine between the two as the enemy prepares for the final blow. The hero shouts again for the young woman to run and not look back, because he needs to settle things quickly. At that moment, a colossal beast charges a red energy attack to destroy everything around it. We then see the hero and his sister bound by magic chains as they watch the danger approach. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, and the multi-headed monster begins its total rampage. With that, the blonde rival is thrown far away by the impact of that overwhelming force. At that instant, the young man and the girl look startled at someone walking through the smoke. We then focus on the firm steps of a person arriving on the battlefield to change their fate. But soon, the blonde warrior draws her sword and announces that she has come as reinforcement to save the group. The boy is surprised by the unexpected visit and wonders what she is doing in this dangerous area. He then thanks her for saving him once again, while the fallen enemy tries to recover from the shock. But the traitor gets up in a panic and shouts that he can't believe this turn of events. With that, a purple dagger glows intensely in the villain's hand as he plans a cowardly and deadly attack. At that moment, the trash moves in from behind the knight to try and finish her off in a treacherous way. However, the protagonist notices the movement and activates a protection ability at the last second. A giant fist of energy then appears to repel the blow and show who's in charge. From the impact of the punch, the adversary is thrown to the ground and lets out a cry of pure agony. The boy then calls the guy scum, but receives a gentle thank you from his blonde ally, but the roar of the giant hydra interrupts the moment, showing that the main monster is still standing. With that, the hero notices his stamina is low and that he can't teleport everyone out of there. At that instant, he asks his companion to take his little sister to a safe place, far from the fight. She accepts the mission immediately and starts running, carrying little Shiori in her arms. As they flee, the girl cries out for her brother, showing she is very worried about what's to come. He maintains a focused gaze, showing that he is ready to face the toughest challenge of his life. But the young woman affirms that she believes they will meet again and asks the warrior not to lose this fight. With a confident smile, the trapmaster confirms that he will do his best to win. The boy is then left alone before the seven-headed beast and prepares for the final confrontation. At that moment, the monster roars with all its fury, showing it will have no mercy for its opponent. But the hero concentrates his magic into a glowing circle and vows that he will take down this area boss. He then creates a purple magic circle to launch himself into the final battle. In the air, he is surrounded by the hydra's heads, which fire red beams in every direction. With that, one of the creature's heads fires a powerful energy beam straight at him. With no time to waste, our hero creates a diamond shield to block the beast's attacks. He knows that if he defeats the boss, all the monsters and the enemy's army will disappear. With a plan in mind, the young man figures that to win, he needs to destroy the base of the central neck. At that moment, he realizes the heads are spread out to protect the creature's weak spot. So he deduces that if he jumps into the middle of the hydra, its defenses will be wide open. With his sword in hand, the protagonist shouts that this will be the final blow to end the fight. And so, he leaps toward the monster's core to deliver the decisive attack. But suddenly, the young man realizes something is very wrong and wonders if this is a trap. At that moment, an intense light hits him, and he is caught off guard by the creature's trap. A massive explosion occurs, engulfing our hero without giving him any chance to defend himself. As the dust settles, his blonde rival appears on the ground, coughing from the smoke. He gets up, stunned, and wonders what on earth just happened there. Then, the delinquent remembers the protagonist and tries to understand the outcome of the battle. To his surprise, the hydra is still standing and seems completely unharmed. At this, the rival lets out a laugh, realizing the guy couldn't even scratch the area boss. Our hero then appears on the ground, and the enemy says he was just a rookie hunter. Unconscious, his sister's voice begins to echo in his mind, calling for him desperately. The scene shifts to the past, and we see Shiori asking why her brother isn't saying anything. Bruised, our protagonist seems to have gotten into a fight at school and is injured. She says he should tell their mom or the teachers, but he just asks for the first aid kit. With a sad look, the girl kneels and seems hesitant to say something to her brother. She then asks if he gets picked on for always saying he wants to be a hunter, but he states that they've already decided, and one day he will protect her and their mom, so he can't cry. Despite his words, the young girl continues to look very worried about the situation. At that, she says she can't stand to see him like this, and asks him not to keep everything to himself. Back in the present, our hero's eyes suddenly open with a newfound determination. He gets up from the ground and faces one of the hydra's heads, ready to continue the fight. The creature concentrates a sphere of red energy, and the protagonist senses the imminent danger. With a desperate look, the young man prepares for the impact with nowhere to run. Suddenly, an armored hand grabs his arm, stopping him from backing away. To his surprise, Jean appears and protects him with her sword, calling him master. Then, little Mimi also appears to help, and the young man is happy they came. The elf then turns to her master and says she's ashamed to admit something. She explains that upon sensing the danger, they disobeyed his orders and came back to save him. With his two allies by his side, the protagonist is speechless for a moment. With a sincere smile on his face, he thanks them both for the unexpected help. His companions then turn to the monster, ready to fight with everything they have. Now together, the trio faces the giant hydra, preparing for the real battle. The creature fires several beams, and the young man asks his allies to do something for him. He then yells for them to seal the beast's attacks for a short time, and they agree. Jane plants her feet firmly on the ground and prepares to spring into action to execute the plan. The protagonist runs toward the hydra, thinking he might not be able to do this alone, but with the help of his companions, he believes he can win and prepares his magic. He remembers a trap he prepared earlier and thinks it's the only one that can end the fight. Following the plan, the warrior attacks one of the creature's heads with her sharp sword. Meanwhile, Mimi runs toward the monster's legs to carry out his part of the strategy. The small chest opens to reveal a bomb, which he places at the creature's base. A huge explosion occurs, causing considerable damage to the giant hydra. Amid the flames, Jane praises Mimi for the successful attack against the area boss. The two then look up to see the result of their combined attack. The elf observes her gauntlet, which seems damaged by the monster's power. To everyone's shock, the creature's wounds begin to heal rapidly. Jen realizes the beast has immense power and absurd regeneration. She then concludes that they don't have enough firepower to deal with this enemy, but our hero interrupts her, saying they do have enough power to win. He thanks the two for their help and launches a purple energy attack at the creature. The elf grows worried and asks if her master is really going to release that trap. With a shout, our hero activates his trap creation with all the energy he has left. A wave of purple energy spreads across the battlefield, destroying everything in its path. Several coffins emerge from the ground, positioning themselves for the grand final strategy. The screen reveals that these are the phantom coffins used to seal trapped monsters. With a determined look, our protagonist states that this time, he will end it all for good. He then prepares the ultimate trap to finally put an end to the powerful beast. The young man turns to the Hydra and shouts for the creatures of darkness to assemble for battle. He then activates his special ability, called Monster Force, to summon his new army. The protagonist faces the giant Hydra as several creatures appear behind him. The Hydra roars furiously, but doesn't seem intimidated by our hero's army. He then explains that his mana dropped drastically because of the battle in the tunnel. At that moment, the scene flashes back to the tunnel where he was surrounded by enemies before. He reveals that the place was full of traps that summoned monsters nonstop. Inside the tunnel, he used his subjugation ability to dominate all the creatures. With a smile, he says that although he used a lot of mana, he obtained the strongest army, and so he faces the giant Hydra alongside his new and powerful creatures. With a determined look, the young man affirms that he will finish the monster once and for all. He then orders his infantry of trapped monsters to advance and attack the Hydra. One of the creature's heads fires a red energy beam to defend against the attack. The creatures advance fearlessly and face the energy beam with everything they've got. One of the armored warriors prepares to strike one of the Hydra's heads with his axe. The creature then fires another energy beam at the various warriors approaching. The Hydra's head attacks with a powerful charge, but is blocked by the warrior with the axe. He manages to hold back the blow, but seems to be struggling to contain the beast's strength. Two other creatures advance from the sides, taking advantage of the distraction from the first attack. Surprised by the team attack, the protagonist watches the battle intently. He then shouts not to waste their comrades' efforts and to sever its head. The two warriors charge forward with their weapons in hand, ready to finish the attack. And so, with a swift and precise strike, they sever one of the giant Hydra's heads. The two warriors charge forward with their weapons in hand, ready to finish the attack. In the sky, a flying monster is attacked by one of the armored warriors from the protagonist's army. The warrior manages to grab the fish monster with both hands to immobilize it. He then uses all his strength to hurl the creature like a projectile at the enemy. The screen reveals that these are the flying, type trap monsters, ready for battle. The Hydra fires its energy beams to defend against the new wave of approaching attacks. But the flying monsters manage to dodge the beams with agility and advance without fear. They brace themselves to crash into the Hydra's heads in a one-way attack. With that, a shower of flaming meteors rains down from the sky to hit the giant Hydra. The creature roars in pain as it's hit squarely by the shower of explosive attacks. Several explosions occur, causing massive damage to the Hydra, which screams in agony. Other ground monsters join the battle, attacking the creature's body with all their might. The Hydra thrashes amidst the chaos, trying to shake off all the monsters attacking it. Our hero then uses his magic to propel himself into the air for the final blow. He flies toward the weakened Hydra, ready to deliver the decisive strike. With his sword glowing, he prepares to slice the creature in half once and for all. A blue energy envelopes the protagonist as he concentrates for his last strike. He hits the Hydra's core, and the creature begins to disintegrate into pure energy. In the distance, the blonde rival watches the scene in shock, unable to believe what he's seeing. He remembers his master's orders not to let the protagonist get away under any circumstances. The delinquent becomes desperate and wonders what he can do alone against the hero. Afraid, he decides to hide inside one of the coffins to escape the battle. After the victory, Jean and Mimi approach their master, who looks exhausted but happy. He praises his allies' magnificent fight and thanks everyone for their help in the battle. With a serious look, the young man says the fight isn't over yet and that there's more to be done. He explains that defeating the area boss frees the entire place from the curse. In other words, the exposed core they just hit is the key to the final victory. He prepares to destroy the core and free the West District once and for all. The young man concentrates his energy into his sword, preparing for the final blow that will decide everything. Suddenly, the core fires a red energy beam that hits our hero head on. He cries out in pain from the impact and is thrown backward by the force of the attack. The beam is absorbed by a purple sphere that the villain Dojima holds in his hand. He says that was a close call and that the core is now safe inside his monster case. Our protagonist is shocked to see the enemy right there in front of him. Dojima says he knows the young man's goal is to defeat the boss and free the area. With a malicious smile, the villain holds the sphere containing the boss's core. He then states that he can't let that happen so easily. He raises his finger, and his monsters prepare to attack our hero's group. The villain says he made preparations in case something like this happened during the battle. With a confident look, he declares that this will be the final battle between them. Our protagonist faces the enemy with a serious and worried expression. The villain then summons an army of creatures to fight by his side in the battle. Several monsters appear and surround the protagonist and his allies, leaving no chance of escape. Dojima says that to defeat the boss, they'll have to take it from his hands first. He then boasts about his army and seems very confident in his victory. Several monsters advance, and the protagonist finds himself surrounded by enemies on all sides. He orders all units not to break formation and to fight by covering one another. The young man then turns to Jean and Mimi and says he has a special job for them. He asks them to follow his instructions very carefully from now on. Our hero then gives a hand signal, seemingly having a plan to turn the tables. He throws a smoke bomb that explodes and creates a distraction on the battlefield. Jean grows worried and shouts her master's name, not understanding what is happening. Amidst the smoke, the elf looks for her master, but can't find him. Little Mimi also cries out desperately upon realizing he's been separated from his owner. Our protagonist realizes the bombardment has separated him from his allies and becomes concerned. Dojima reappears and says that this fight won't be over so soon, staring at him with a smile. The villain comments that he must have spent a lot of mana on his monster force in the previous battle. Our hero knows that if the fight turns into a war of attrition, he will lose quickly. The screen shows his mana decreasing, and he knows he must avoid this at all costs. Suddenly, several robotic monsters start running toward him to attack. He turns around, startled, and sees the army of robots approaching for the final assault. He then activates his trap creation to try to escape the robot army. With the insane jump trap, he is launched into the air, fleeing from the enemies. Two of the robots end up crashing into each other with force and explode in the middle of the battlefield. Our protagonist thinks he can finish them off, but can't afford to spend too much mana right now. He lands on the ground and prepares to continue fighting the robots that surround him. With a determined look, he decides to use a new strategy to conserve his energy. In the distance, the villain Dojima watches the scene with a malicious and confident smile. He seems surprised by something, but shows no concern about the situation. Suddenly, a whistle doll appears on the battlefield to attract the monsters. The robots are confused by the doll's appearance and don't understand what's happening. Our hero then calls the monsters' attention and asks them to approach the doll. The robots obey and move closer to the trap, curious to see what will happen. The protagonist activates another trap creation, and a magic circle appears under the robots. The monsters are caught by surprise by the trap and are launched into the air with no chance to defend. The flash electric fence hits all the robots with a powerful shock, deactivating them. He celebrates having managed to defeat the enemies using only low-cost traps. Even so, he knows the situation is still difficult and that this tactic won't work forever. His mana continues to decrease, and he feels the pressure of the battle weighing on his shoulders. Suddenly, a giant robot appears behind him, ready to attack with everything it has. Our hero uses his trap creation to create hell burners and attack the robot. He holds the sphere of fire, but seems to be struggling to control so much power. With a shout, He unleashes a shower of rocks that crushes the robots with full force. His mana continues to drop, and he realizes he has no time to think about tactics. He then notices that he's not the only one struggling, and that his troops are also suffering. His monsters are being overwhelmed by the difference in numbers, and he grows worried. He looks to the sky and sees his flying monsters being taken down one by the enemy. Our protagonist realizes he needs to retreat before his mana reaches 0, and he loses. He then starts running to get out of the danger zone and recover his strength. Purple energy beams follow him as he flees the battlefield desperately. He looks back and sees Dojima's army pursuing him relentlessly. Suddenly, an arrow is fired in his direction, and he has no time to dodge. He turns around frightened and realizes he's cornered with nowhere to run. With no choice, he uses his last bit of energy to create a diamond shield and protect himself. The arrow collides with the shield, but he realizes his mana has hit 0, and he's defenseless. The villain Dojima laughs and asks what he's doing, spending his last mana on a single arrow. He says that now the protagonist's fate is sealed, and that he can do nothing more. With a malicious smile, he gloats about his victory and how his plan was a success. He states that a hunter with no mana on the battlefield is completely finished. Our hero becomes desperate, realizing that all that's left is to accept his end. The villain then says his goodbyes and tells him to see him in the afterlife, but he's interrupted by someone. The blonde rival appears and shouts that he will be the one to finish off the protagonist. He says that after all the times he's been humiliated, he deserves the right to get his revenge. The delinquent then prepares to attack the protagonist with his glowing sword. With a shout, he uses his tornado ability to deliver a powerful blow. Suddenly, Dojima strikes him and throws him to the ground with force. The rival is shocked and doesn't understand why his own master attacked him. The villain yells at him not to interfere, saying he's a piece of trash who's 100 years too early to be stealing his prey. Our protagonist questions how he could treat his own comrade that way. Dojima replies that a comrade is someone useful and that the blonde only got in the way of his missions. He says that useless worms like him are just an eyesore and that it was natural to eliminate him. Our hero gets angry and yells that he can't just discard people like that. With a cold look, the protagonist faces the villain, who seems not to care about anything. Dojima then reaffirms that he will be the king who rules the world by his own rules. He shouts that there is no place for the weak in his kingdom, and that all will be eliminated. Losers and cowards who can't carry their own weight will be cut down without mercy. He then declares that only the strong and capable have the right to live in his new world. Our protagonist is speechless upon hearing the villain's cruel words. He then asks what will happen to the people living in the city now. The villain laughs and says that for now, they are alive only to keep the city running. He then reveals that sooner or later, all the elderly with no future will be discarded. Next, he says that children with no talent will also be the next to be eliminated. With a malicious smile, the villain amuses himself with the idea of his perfect world of the strong. Our protagonist realizes the only ones left would be the henchmen he brought with him. But Dojima laughs and says those useless fools aren't truly strong. He explains that he only used them temporarily until his monster army was ready, and now that he has enough troops, there's no longer any reason to keep them around. He wonders what use hunters without remarkable skills are in his new world. Our hero calls him an arrogant fool and says that one day he'll be all alone in the world. But the villain replies that it's fine with him if it means achieving his ideal. The protagonist then asks what exactly the enemy's sick ideal is. Dojima laughs and prepares to reveal his grand plan for the future of the world. He says his ideal is to create a world where only the strong can survive. Our hero is shocked to hear the villain's madness and his twisted vision of justice. The enemy shouts that he doesn't care if humanity is wiped out and will accept the solitude. Suddenly, our protagonist starts to laugh, leaving the villain confused by his reaction. He says he was just feeling grateful for the precious words of his great king. The young man then asks what the people of the city or his henchmen would think if they heard this. With a smile, he wonders what everyone's reaction would be upon discovering the truth. Dojima becomes furious and asks what he's hiding behind his back. Little Mimi appears with a video game controller and a headset. The villain is shocked to realize he's been tricked, and that everything was broadcast. Our hero asks with a smile what he's hiding and reveals the drones. Several drones appear in the sky, broadcasting everything to the city and the world. The screen reveals that this was a trap to expose the villain's true colors. The drones surround the battlefield, showing everyone the truth behind the new king.